I'm coming.
Welcome, everyone, to Ladder Daily Digest. We honor creators, and on Tuesday nights, we sort of honor Tim by crashing into his living room sofa, and we talk about things that are on our mind. And what's on our mind this week is the Lori Vallow verdict. And thanks, Megan, for coming on the show. Maybe you can talk a little bit about it first.
Hi,
Sure.
Megan.
Hi, how are you guys doing? Good to be here with you.
Thank you.
I've been missing you since I've been in Arizona. I haven't been able to participate in Tuesdays with Tim, and it's like I had a hole in my Tuesday nights.
You were missed.
So yeah, I guess we had kind of a big day today, huh?
Yes.
A little bit.
Yes. Really big day, man.
You know, I was saying
talking
to
Randy, and then all of a sudden you came on, and I was in the store, and I listened to you from the store home. I came home, turned the TV on, had the TV on my phone while I was walking around the house, listening to you.
Yeah, so I was saying to one of my friends when we were in Arizona during the opening statements, I don't think that probably not since the Lafferty brothers have we had a trial where the Book of Mormon was so openly featured, not only in the opening and closing statements, but throughout the trial, throughout the testimony. It was just really interesting, what a big role the LDS religion played in these crimes and in the psyche of Lori and Chad. And we've kind of watched this play out for the last almost 6 years now. By the time we're finished with Brandon Boudreau's trial, it will be almost 6 years. It all started with Charles Vallow. And I feel like today this was a big closing of a book and a chapter where we finally have justice for him, because his was the first life taken. And Kay Woodcock always said Charles would have wanted for the kids to be taken care of first. And so Kay has always said that she felt like this was right to do it this way, to take care of the kids and then take care of Charles. And so I'm really grateful that we have justice for him and his family members. And it's been a long 5 years, and we're not quite there yet. We are almost done, but we're not quite there yet.
That's right. What is the next trial?
So the next trial is for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreau. And I know for people who haven't followed this case, it's really confusing. There are lots of different names, lots of different players. But essentially, Lori decided that she was going to start taking over people's lives, essentially. This kind of we have to kind of dial back a little bit. Lori's oldest sister, Stacy, died in about 1998. It was 1998. And Stacy had one child, Melanie. And when Stacy died, Melanie was kept away from the Cox family for a long time because of some of the harmful relational dynamics in the Cox family. Her dad was very wise to keep her away. When she got a little bit older, she was reunited with the Coxes, and she sort of adopted Lori as a mother figure. And so Melanie married Brandon Boudreau. They had 4 beautiful children. They had what seemed to be a really idyllic life. And then Lori started intervening, and she basically convinced Melanie that her husband Brandon was gay and that she needed to divorce him. Brandon's not gay. And I think that Melanie was just really impressionable. And so they started having marital problems, and Brandon filed for divorce from Melanie, I believe, on July 8th of 2019. And Charles was killed on July 11th of 2019. So Lori was sort of getting her conniving things in pretty early. So Charles died on July 11th. The landlord asked her to move out of the house on August 31st. She moved with the children to Idaho. So she took JJ and Tylee, and Alex came with her, and they moved to Idaho. And then the kids went missing, and nobody knew where they were. And then on October, I believe it was October 9th or so, I get all the dates kind of jumbled up, but it was early October, maybe October 10th, when Brandon Boudreaux, knowing that Melanie was caught up in this sort of doomsday cult, secreted away the children from Melanie. And nobody knew where he or the children were, except that Melanie had his address. And sure enough, on October 10th, he was pulling into his driveway after going to the gym, and someone in a Jeep shot at him. And luckily, the bullet hit the frame of his window and he was not killed. The driver took off in the Jeep. And because he is an insurance agent and he helped insure all of the vehicles of the Vallows, he recognized it as Tylee Ryan's Jeep and recognized that Alex Cox was the driver of that Jeep and likely the shooter. So this very last trial that is going to start next month is for the attempted murder of Brandon Boudreaux.
So let's just say that they skipped the trial. Excuse me. She's already serving 3 life sentences. Now, whatever she'll be, I don't know how long she'll get for this last trial. But what
she could get life without parole for guilty of conspiracy to commit first-degree murder.
So 4 life sentences. This is just for the comfort of those involved, I guess, huh? To solve the crime, but or figure out. I mean, you know what I'm saying? We're layering.
Yeah, exactly. And lots of people have kind of expressed this same idea, and I understand. You know, it is costly to prosecute someone for murder. It's costly for the state. There's a lot of time involved for the prosecution and for the defending attorneys as well. There's a lot of money involved in bringing her to the state and bringing her to prison or to the courthouse and putting this trial on. So a lot of people are like, what's the point? She's already serving 3 consecutive life prisons or life sentences. She's never going to leave prison. But what I keep saying is that the truth matters and justice matters. And we're so grateful that Brandon is still alive, that the attempt on his life was unsuccessful. But I think it matters for the victims, and it matters for holding Lori accountable. And this was the whole problem, I think, from the very beginning, is that Lori was never held accountable as a younger person for her manipulation and her control. And so I think now this is important. It's important to continue to hold her accountable, even if she's already received maximum consequences in another area. To me, it's worth the money.
I get that. I mean, I understand that. If Lori had an ounce of decency, she'd get up there and plead guilty right away and save these hours and hours of and money galore.
Yeah. Yeah. And I spoke with Trina Kay, the prosecutor, several times throughout this process. And she did not offer Lori the option of pleading guilty. There was no plea deal offered in this case. And the reason for that, I believe, is, you know, Trina Kay said she is appealing, of course, her convictions in Idaho. She has no idea what's going to happen there. And what Trina Kay's comment was, is that if she happens to win her appeals for some ungodly reason, and, you know, she gets released from her sentences there, Trina Kay said, I want her to die here in Arizona.
Wow.
Well, Jesus did tell her that she would be exonerated.
She did, and she was expecting an angel to be on the jury in her first trial. She's expected the prison walls to fall down around her. But so far, her Jesus has kind of abandoned her, it looks like.
It's just, he's just testing her.
Maybe he's testing her faithfulness, yeah. And I'm sure that she's going to go back to jail today. And her little cohort of women that for whom she is the savior and the protector and the teacher, I'm sure she's going to go back with her persecution complex and say, it was so unfair. It was rigged. I never should have been convicted. You know, it's another reason for her to play the victim and, you know, to be pitied by everyone.
Jesus is already 2,000 years late for dinner. He wasn't there Sunday night. I looked around. He didn't show up at all. So I hope Lori has a lot of patience waiting for Jesus
Well,
to bust the doors down.
she's going to learn patience in prison.
Delusions of grandeur, for sure.
A very regimented.
What's the name of that book? Versions of Glory.
It's called Visions of Glory, but I like to call it Delusions of Glory.
Delusions of Glory. That's right.
Yeah.
Don't read it, Gene. We don't want to lose you to the
No,
dark side.
you know what? Just go watch the 5-hour episode. It'll take less time than reading it. Just go to Mormon Stories, watch the episode. We read it so you didn't have to.
That's right. I'm on a different track anyway because I had a near-life experience, and that's different from everybody else's near-death experiences.
Like you almost lived a life.
I came that close to having fun once.
I love
that
it.
close, huh?
Missed
Yeah,
it by
just missed
That
it.
much.
That's right. And so thank you, Megan, so much for all your
do you
work
think
that
that-
you've been doing. And go ahead, Tim.
Do you think that she's spreading her gospel in prison?
Oh, 100%. 100%. I've actually talked to a couple of people who were texting with her on her. She has a little sort of an iPad that she's allowed to have communications with people. And I talked to a couple of people who were texting with her in Idaho. And they basically, the consensus was that, you know, as long as you don't ask her about the case or the kids, she's happy to talk with you, especially if you want to talk religion. She is really adamant about spreading her version of the gospel.
Wow.
Yeah.
So she has.
I hope she gets a lot of
iPad
convicts.
in prison.
Converts.
She can text from prison.
Yeah, and it's sort of the same as letting inmates write letters in the past. You know, you can also go make an account in the prison system and you can ask to video chat with her. She has to accept your invitation. But yeah, you can communicate with her if you want to.
Wow.
You're muted, Randy.
That's very dangerous.
I think that's dangerous. The last thing I want to do is communicate with her because it seems like everyone who does that gets dead.
Yes, that's a distinct possibility. Although, you know, she definitely is, you know, less potent now being behind bars, and her angel of death hitman guy is dead. So, but I do think it's dangerous. You know, this is the thing that I kind of said from the beginning that scares me is that you can't kill an idea, and there are people out there who still ascribe to some of the beliefs that Chad and Lori were teaching. And there are still some of these little splinter groups in little, you know, hidden conclaves in Idaho and other places where they're still teaching things like past lives and multiple probations and, you know, spiritual demonic possession and things like that. So I think it is dangerous.
Yikes.
Wow.
So tonight we're going to talk about other things too. And because Tim was there, Tim, just think if there was true crime shows during Joseph Smith's life, what type of episodes would you point to?
Money digging.
So first there's the money digging, right?
Yeah.
First there's money digging, then there's juggling, which is scrying or glass looking. And then there was vagrancy. They were warned out of town because they were warned out of not Palmyra,
Sharon, Vermont.
Sharon, I don't think they were warned out of. I think they were warned out of Palmyra, and then he had leg bail and for the money for the glass looking.
Now before Joseph eloped with Emma Smith, I think he was accused of having illicit intercourse, we'll say, or affairs with people in neighborhoods that's there. And there could be, I'm going to predict at some point in the near future that there could be either a GoFundMe or some type of rich person that's really interested in Mormon history might put up $1 million reward for descendants of Joseph Smith, not through Emma. Because there could exist either A, descendants that were from the sealings or from other illicit affairs or scrapes, as Tim would have said 200 years
Dirty,
ago.
nasty, filthy scrapes.
Dirty, nasty,
So I didn't
scrapes.
realize that glass looking was the same as juggling. I've never made that connection before. Is that, how do you explain that to me?
Juggling is fortune telling. It's another word for fortune telling.
Oh, got it.
If you ever watch The Wizard of Oz, look at what's written on the wizard's wagon. He says juggler. A lot of people don't know what that is. Yeah, it's scrying, it's glass looking, it's any of those kinds of things.
Oh my god,
that's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. The court jesters would actually throw things up and do things, but the word juggling did have more meanings.
More meanings, yeah.
That's interesting. Yeah, and I always thought that it was, when I was reading Fawn Brody's book, No Man Knows My History, what I found really fascinating was this idea that Joseph Smith would go to people's, he would go to people and say, I think you have a treasure buried on your property. And I know how to talk to the ancient spirit who is guarding your treasure. And then inevitably he would say, okay, well, the spirit requires some kind of a sacrifice. And then he would line out the kind of sacrifice ceremony ritual that they had to perform. And then inevitably, gosh darn it, if you didn't know it, they did it wrong. And the guardian of the treasure took the treasure and disappeared with it and went to someone else's property.
And that verbiage, the slippery treasure that slips into the earth, is in the Book of Mormon.
Yes, it is.
But this goes back to the 1700s, if not before. In Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, he talks about all the holes around Philadelphia where people are money digging. So before Joseph Smith, they thought Captain Kidd had his treasure up there in that area in New England and Pennsylvania, New York. They thought there was a rumor that he buried treasure up there.
That's really interesting.
And so people were looking for it people were looking for it for at least 100 years, maybe 1700s, I think is when Captain Kidd was. Yeah. So
hey Tim, Maven's saying that she can't hear you. That you
can't hear me.
I hear too much of you.
Oh, there you go. Now,
just want you to be a little bit louder.
A little bit louder. All right. Got to hold this by my mouth. All right.
Maybe just a halfway. Let's do a halfway thing.
Halfway?
Yeah.
What's that? Okay.
You can put it down to your chin probably, and it still would be okay. I see lots of TikTokers do that when they have theirs.
Okay. Well.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. Is that good?
And another thing is, we learned from Kathleen Melanakis that the family was engaged. The Smith family was engaged in counterfeiting. There were early things. I can't remember what happened in Vermont. There was some type of wood scrape group or something like that.
Yeah,
and so interestingly, in counterfeiting, you have to have blood oaths for the people who are spreading your money or know about the counterfeiting, because one weak link can bring down the whole chain of counterfeiters.
Oliver Cowdery was part of that group.
Oliver Cowdery's dad or something?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the group.
By the way,
called the Wood Scrape Affair or something.
Yeah, the Wood Scrape Affair. That's what it is. Yeah.
And we're inviting another person to the show.
Kendall.
Hey,
hello, such an exciting day. Wow, so much has happened. What have we talked about so far?
We talked about how much Gene's grass has grown and how much Randy's beard has grown. and how many more cats that Tim has so far. That's what we've covered.
I've always been a one cat person myself. So we haven't talked about the fact that Gene lost a huge lawsuit.
Oh no.
It's just a minor setback.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty what's the word I'm looking for? Arbitrary, that they're like, oh no, you should have filed it from the time he alleged any wrongdoing against the church, not when he was actually proven that it was wrong.
That's right. So they're gonna the lawyers have emailed Michelle and I, and they have told us that they are resolute on carrying this to the next level of appeal.
Oh, good. Yeah, I was going to ask you. That is what I want to hear. Go, Gene. Yes.
Yeah. And so
Love
it has
it.
nothing to do with personally with me. I just lucked into it. I backed into it. Thanks to Rebecca Biblioteca. About a year and a half ago, she put out a call for somebody in California that didn't like that they paid tithing, we'll say, and be willing to be the face of a lawsuit. And Michelle reluctantly joined us. But, she was involved with the discussions with the lawyers. And so we read over what the lawsuit was. When the boilerplate agreement said, in case we lose, we might be subject to court costs. And Michelle said, no, we're not going to pay any court costs whatsoever. And they go, oh, we need to change that. And so the lawyers and their, we'll say, benefactor, that I don't know for sure, but it could be somebody named Huntsman. And has decided to, they have decided to, do what they can for this lawsuit, because it's more than just the money at stake. It's, truth, right?
Oh man, it would be a huge win if we could just get to discovery. That would be the whole game right there.
That is the game. If you can get any lawsuit on the books where you can get the church to discovery, that's the thing that they are scared more than anything about, because that's not going to look good for them.
You wouldn't even need a stone in a hat to see what the books are. If they do discovery the old-fashioned way, you earn it.
Right. They'd have to upload them to a portal.
Corruption thrives is in darkness.
All I want is the last tithing check that I wrote, because it's the check that the bishop convinced me to write to be able to live with my late wife again. And so I'm embarrassed to even say the amount, but it was between $29,000 and $31,000. I just want that tithing check back.
Wow.
And I'll be happy.
Well, can we go back to William Kidd for a minute?
Of course.
So yes, so Kendall, today's show's about Mormon true crime, and since Tim was there, we're going way back to the 1800s and the
Billy the Kid.
Oh yeah, tell us some stories, Tim.
I actually have a family relation to Captain Kidd. Okay.
Nice.
He started pirating. He was born in 1645 and he died in 1701, and he lived in New York for a while. Well, when he was granted to be a privateer, which means that he could raid cargo and stuff for the king as long as he gave the king some booty. Well, when they went around the Horn of Africa and they were up their way to Madagascar, India, one of my relatives, I don't know if it was an Elkanah or a Solomon, anyway, was a broker. He was a Jewish broker from Liverpool, I think. He was one of three on the boat. They financed, they insured his trip. They jumped ship, I think, in India, and made their way back to the Admiralty, and they're the ones that reported him to the Admiralty for piracy.
Wow.
And then he did settle in New York in the late 1691, and they got him in, I think, 1695 or so, 96. Let me see.
Yeah, but because of the rumors that there were treasures buried from the pirating, that and even before, I don't know if it was before COVID, that group that went to Oak Island, the Oak Island Mystery, that whole thing, I don't know if you know about it, but like it's treasure digging. It's all treasure digging live in the 21st century, and you can see what they're doing. And it actually, that Oak Island mystery brought in Franklin Delano Roosevelt when he was a young man. He was part of a company that was trying to find the treasure on Oak Island. And that's the fact that there's companies. So Joseph Smith was involved in lots of companies that would look for different things. And he was actually sued by the son of one of the major contributors to Joseph Smith's treasure digging. Tim, who was that? The case where there was lots of testimony. Maybe somebody notes it in the chat.
Not Willard Chase.
So, but it was
Chase?
The dad
Sally,
that was funding
Sally,
the digs.
Solomon Chamberlain.
So I can't remember, but this person hired Joseph Smith to from 100 miles away. And so the church told me that Joseph Smith did do some things as a teenager. He was ashamed of them, and they were just little things, like he got paid to do digging. And now we know that Joseph Smith never dug. This gentleman went out of his way 100 miles because Joseph Smith had fame of seeing buried treasure through his magic rock in a hat and other things like that.
Like I said, he wasn't the only one. He was one of many.
Right.
During that time.
There also were many prophets. There's been many religions started in America. There's been other groups that were sex cults in the 1800s.
The Seventh-day Adventists.
Great grandparents were interested in sex way back then.
No.
Yeah.
They had sex back then? Is that what you're saying?
More than just enough
at least
for your
once
sibling.
for each kid.
Yeah, at least once for each
Let's
kid.
not get ahead of ourselves.
That's right.
Speaking of sex.
So let's move to 1837. What happened in 1837 that might be considered a crime? How about starting an illegal bank?
Oh, the Kirtland Safety Society.
The Kirtland Safety Society, which it turns out was not safe at all.
That's right. It was anti-banking and it was anti-safe. They could have kept on going with that anti.
Well, you got to remember though that they left. They were told to leave New York. He owed money, so he had to leave New York. He went to Ohio, and he got in trouble in Ohio because he was traveling between Ohio and Missouri from about 1832 to 1837.
Not just Ohio, the Ohio.
The Ohio and Missouri. Going back and forth.
Yeah, Missouri was like his out from at the far west wilds of the Americas, North America, well, the United States of America at the time.
That was the edge of the world.
That was the far west in Missouri, right?
And they also were going to start a bank up in Minnesota or Michigan somewhere that we still don't know a lot about.
One thing I never heard in Sunday school when they were talking about church history was that after the anti-banking snafu, Joseph Smith ran away to Canada for a little while to avoid arrest.
Right.
But he and some other benefactors actually were found guilty, and they were charged with having to pay back $70,000. And Wikipedia says that somehow like 30 to 40,000 got paid, and then the other people had to pound sand.
And that's when he met the Fieldings, and that's when Joseph Fielding. That's when they went to England because of Joseph Fielding. Mary Fielding was Hiram's wife, and that's where Joseph Fielding Smith, the name comes from.
Right.
So when it was up in Canada,
I've got to just take two granddaddy steps backwards, because you were talking about the pirates and booty. Did I hear that correctly?
Randy, he meant money, not the other kind.
Okay, because I'm like, booty, that you didn't. Okay.
The 19th century term.
Well, they're
both
both
that you call on a weekend.
I always wondered why they call it pirate's booty.
Not
like
a port of call.
Bag of,
So Crash D says, are all 5 of you ex-Mormons? Who is still a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
I am
I
a
have
member,
not taken off
Randy,
my
you
name
are?
yet.
So raise your hand, Kendall.
not an active member, but I am.
All
No,
right.
but we're on the records of the church as members.
They haven't
I
caught up.
go
to
about
me.
5 times a year, and one of those times I try to make it to state conference and vote opposed to the Q15. And so,
And Tim, if I'm correct, you were excommunicated, correct?
May 2001.
that's
Amazing.
the honor badge of
It
ex-Mormons.
is. You know, sometimes it's an honor badge and sometimes it's not. And I don't know if some of you guys saw Alyssa Grenfell had a TikTok. I don't even remember how I came across it. Oh, I remember. It was because John DeLynn reposted it. But she listed some of the people who have been excommunicated and some of the people who have not been excommunicated. Notably, my cousin, Lori Vallow, is one of those who has, as far as we know, not been excommunicated. But people like, you know, Sam Young, who advocates for kids not being alone in a room with a bishop for an interview, he got excommunicated. So sometimes it's a badge of honor, which in your case, Tim, I consider it a badge of honor.
Oh, thank you.
There you go.
Yeah, apparently you can kill people. You can be commit SA to children, and the church doesn't care, but don't question the authorities.
And also don't make them look bad, because then you get a public excommunication like Tim Ballard.
Right. Yeah.
Or John DeLynn.
Right.
But yeah. And so moving on from Ohio.
May 8th, 2000, May 6th.
So in Missouri, we hear as Mormons that there was persecution. And what we don't hear is that there were things that Mormons were saying to the Missourians, like, hey, you guys don't stand a chance. Jesus is coming and we're going to inherit the earth. And so it's all going to be ours. Everything
God gave us this land.
Yeah, that's right. Also, we're going to reserve this land right over here in Jackson County, because that is Jesus's special land. That's where he's going to come back to. I don't know if you guys have ever been there before.
I have,
but
yes.
I went there just shortly before my exit from the church. And it was one of those things that was a shelf item for me, because the reason I went is because somebody in my congregation had passed away. And as part of his estate, he left some money to the church specifically for the youth to go on a church history tour. And so my son, who was 12-ish at the time and still in-ish at the time, wanted to go on this trip because they were going to go to, you know, all of the church history sites in Missouri and Iowa, Ohio, all of those things.
Illinois.
And I said, yeah, to Nauvoo and everything. And I said, okay, you can go, but I am coming with you. I will not go. I will not allow you to go on this little trip unless I'm going. So I went as well. And, I was really expecting that when I got to Adam on Die Amen, that place of legend, that I would feel something akin to maybe what I felt when I walked into the huge St. Matthew Cathedral on Fifth Avenue, when I was just filled with awe about the years and years of toil and labor that it took those faithful people to build that cathedral. And I really didn't feel much at all. It was kind of lackluster. The sun was shining. It was pretty. There were birds singing and everything. But I really didn't feel like it was God's chosen land for some weird reason. I'm not sure why. But I will also tell you that my fourth great-grandfather claims to have been one of the first people to be baptized in Missouri back in 1830. And those of you who know me, you know I like to have source documents. I like to have receipts. I like to have proof. I've never found any proof of his actual name being named as one of the first. But it's written in all of the journals and the personal histories and stuff like that. So it was interesting for me to come across that, because the narrative in my family history is very much, here was a man who was a very successful farmer. He was very wealthy, and he joined the church after hearing just one sermon. And I was like, maybe you should have listened to more than one. I don't know. But then he sold his farm at a loss. He left behind some successful crops in order to follow the saints to far west and eventually to Nauvoo. And on the way, after being run out of several different places that they were living, he was sickly and he fell ill, and he died on the route before he got to Nauvoo. And he had several days of suffering before he died. And one of the last things that he told his children, according to family legend, is he asked his children to promise that they would not marry outside of the faith. And so my third great grandfather carried on that legacy. And when he died, he told his children, if you do not pay your tithing, you cannot come where I'm going. And so that legacy of persecution complex and faithfulness to the church got passed down through the generations. And before I left the church, there was only one other that descended from that line who left before me. And that just goes to show you what trauma bonding and family legacy can do.
Do you know who baptized him, perchance?
I don't know, but from the research that I've done, the only missionaries that were in that area were Hiram Smith and whoever his companion was.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, and so I was
mission to the Indians.
Right. And so I was imagining that possibly Hiram Smith, who is the brother of Joseph Smith, came in and testified of his brother, bringing forth the Book of Mormon, and most likely testified, very convincingly that his brother was called of God to restore the gospel. And he must have been, I'm sure, very compelling.
Well, that's all they taught. They never taught the first vision.
Right.
They only taught
for many years. It was
for many years.
No one mentioned it for
52
decades.
years. I believe it was 52 years.
Right.
After the fact, before the current version even appeared, right?
Yeah, the prophets, the head of the churches would make reference to it as if it was an angel, like an angel appeared to Joseph Smith.
Have you looked at Hiram's diary?
Yes, I did. And I did note that they mentioned baptizing some people in Missouri, like right away when they got there. But I think he concluded his mission in 1829. And my grandfather's diaries say 1830. But the thing is, too, I've also looked at the church records, and they don't name the names of the people. They just say baptized, a group of people, 5 or 6 people or something like that. So his name was never named, as far as I can tell.
Okay.
But I would
there's
somebody
two Hiram Smith
would
diaries.
help me look into it.
Okay.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, there's 2. There's an early one and there's a later one, I think.
So I've looked at the one that's in the BYU archive.
The typescript?
The handwritten one.
Handwritten.
That story reminds me of what's her name? Luna Lindsay Cobden and Recovering Agency, where she goes through all the ways of control, and that's like using social pressure and phobia indoctrination to be like, hey, your ancestors made you promise this, so you got to be true. Oh, it just sickens me.
Oh, yeah. Well, and even when I started having doubts about the church, like when I was a teenager, I would gaslight myself by saying, look, 6 generations of my ancestors can't be wrong. There's no way. And how would I be the only one at this point that would think, that this is wrong, and I would be the correct one, and all of my ancestors, my wise grandfather, my wise grandmother, how could I be right and they be wrong? It's just not possible.
You have the internet.
Well, now I do.
Yeah.
Well,
That's
then they
the big
didn't look
difference.
into it. They didn't look into it. That's the thing.
No.
They followed blindly, like all of my ancestors. I hesitate to say ancestors because I was adopted at birth, but my adoptive family, their ancestors all just were led blindly and just followed. No looking.
They didn't know any better. These people didn't know any better.
Right.
They didn't know any better. They trusted people. You know, people were generally like, you could believe what people said back then. There was a charlatan here and there, like Joseph Smith, right? But for the most part, if they weren't selling snake oil, you could trust them. And the other part that I think is so important to note is, you know, this, and we've talked about this, Tim, when we were at Thrive in St. George, about the, you know, the trauma bonding of leaving everything that you own and leaving the country, going to Utah and walking all the way to
Fully
get
committed.
to a place fully committed to the cause of being able to live for your beliefs. And then my ancestors founded what is now modern day Ogden, Utah, Harrisville, Utah, and they stayed there. My grandmother's last residence was right there, just probably 2 miles away from the place where my third great grandfather lived and was involved in polygamy. And his 2 wives lived across the street in a little duplex. And he went to Canada to avoid being sent to prison. And he was in the picture with George Buchanan wearing a striped suit and everything. So, you know, when they all stay in the same area and they're isolated and nobody leaves and they don't ever get exposed to any other ideas or any other culture, it really just, you know, you just stay. You do what has always been done. You don't question it.
And it's evolutionary. It's literally ingrained in our collective psyche. Leaving the group, being different, having your own ideas meant death, meant you would go into the wilderness and you would die. We are built for survival, not accuracy.
Right.
And having faith in leaders is something that you have too. And, you know, 23 and a half years ago, a very faithful group of people commandeered airplanes and flew them into the Twin Towers, the Pentagon, and where else? And they were headed for, they crashed in Pennsylvania, right?
Yeah.
And so that is big faith. Like if we have to rest our laurels on the faith of pioneers, you know, going across the land when it might be hot days, the water might not taste very good. That's a big sacrifice, but killing yourself for your religion, it means pretty much that the Muslim church is true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, I would argue, though, too, that I think a lot of the pioneers, I don't know if they knew that they were going to their deaths, but they knew that people had died before them.
Well,
and especially the William Martin companies who were leaving so late in the season, who were building with Greenwood,
underfunded,
who were underfunded and undersupplied. And it just guts me how Brigham Young had made that trip several times. And he knew how much provision was needed, and he failed them by not telling them the correct amounts. And so
you're almost accusing Brigham Young of a crime in the early 1850s.
Yes, I am. I think Brigham Young, I will say it right now, I think Brigham Young is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of saints that could have been prevented. Preventable death.
Yes.
He's guilty.
That's another crime.
So moving into Nauvoo.
Well, let's go back to Missouri.
Yeah, sorry, I skipped over a little bit.
It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
And one real quick thing about Missouri is that's the first time the word extermination was used, and it was not by anti-Mormons. It was used by a Mormon talking to Missourians.
That's right.
They're the ones that should be. So that's another thing I didn't learn in history.
They didn't tell you that they were milking the Gentiles. They would go steal their milk and their cows. The Danites would go out and steal because they didn't have enough supply, so they'd steal from people.
It was the Wild West.
The Wild West. And then you had the Gallatin Day election little riot in Gallatin, Missouri. And then you had the governor create a Caldwell County just for the Mormons. You can go to this county. It's for you. And then when they became too much of a problem, we're going to exterminate, either leave the state or we're going to exterminate you.
Shoot
And
on sight.
it was the Mormons' fault. It wasn't the Missourians' fault. It was the Mormons' fault for saying
But they did it in the name of God. So it
Right.
was,
Well, if it's in the name of God, it's okay.
yeah.
right.
Sarcasm
Yeah.
for those of you who, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, it's
Or
core to
listening.
Mormon belief. I mean, the happiness letter is still quoted. You know, what is wrong in one circumstance may be right in another. It's just whatever God, aka your leaders, say. That's what it all comes down to in the end.
Well,
Yeah.
and you've got Luke 19:27, where Jesus tells his followers to kill anybody that's not following me.
Yep.
So, you know.
Also, I just want to
I
mention.
didn't know you were that old, Tim. No, I'm just kidding.
He wrote it.
That's right. I was the scribe.
Yeah. So for those of you who didn't follow the Lori Daybell trial, and God bless you for not following it, because who wants to listen to it if they don't have to? The entire opening statement by the prosecutor could have been titled "Be Like Nephi."
Exactly.
Because there was a text exchange between Lori Daybell and her brother Alex, where she tells him, "I will be like Nephi, I'm told, and so will you." And after the crime was committed, another friend asking what happened, the text came through. It was a Nephi and Laban ending. You have a detective in Chandler, Arizona, who's never been a Mormon before, wondering what the hell this means. And he goes and asks an open-ended question of Mormons, tell me about Nephi. And universally, the story that they tell is the Nephi and Laban story. So we have a history of justifiable homicide in our church. And the justifiable homicide comes down to, if it's for the greater good, then it's probably okay.
Yeah.
Better than one man perish than an entire nation.
I mean,
Dwindle
we
in
don't
unbelief.
we don't know how
Yeah.
many people Joseph Smith told Sam Wild Bill Hickman and Porter Rockwell to kill for him.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think Exmo Joe wants to do a documentary sort of / dramatization of Wild Bill Hickman.
Okay.
That'd be awesome. I'm here for it.
Nice. Yeah, so who's got the next story? I have to leave soon. I actually have to file some paperwork for court in the next 2 hours. I'm almost done, but I have to do a transcript. So who's got a really juicy story, and then I got to sign off.
Kendall, what was the first thing that you heard actually about Mormon true crime? I mean, did you know about the Lafferty brothers? Did you know about who's the serial killer that
Ted Bundy.
I had wisps of Ted Bundy, but like I was told by someone, like, you know, he was just born in a family that was LDS. He was never practicing. They were never believing. There's no connection. And other than that one name, I can't think of one Mormon ever that like did anything wrong. Like, that was the type of house I grew up in, was like, Mormons are perfect. By definition of being Mormon, you are above reproach.
Did you ever hear of Hoffman, Mark Hoffman?
No, I mean, I think when I was an institute teacher, someone asked me about Mark Hoffman, and that was when I first heard of it. This was like in 2014 or something.
You should have said, "Let me copy your question down." That would have been a good sort of full circle.
Yeah, I think I did like note it to look it up, but you know, like so many other things, when I had that feeling of like, oh, there's a there, don't look into that, I never would look into it.
Yeah, I heard Joseph Smith was arrested 40 times and never once convicted. That's what all I heard.
Right. All I heard was that those were trumped up charges. Probably much like most of you, whenever I asked about Mountain Meadows, my dad was like, "Oh, don't ask about that." And then whenever I said, like, what was this salamander letter thing? He was like, "Don't ask about that. We're not going to talk about that." So I didn't learn about it until the Netflix documentary came out.
It's funny how testimonies are so delicate. You can't give your testimony real information, or else you might not believe.
Right.
Well, here's a modern day juicy story, Kendall, before you go.
Okay.
when I was a police officer, I was a trainee, and probably 2 weeks into my shift, we arrested a guy outside of a trailer park in Mesa, Arizona. He was the most foul person I've ever seen or met in my life.
Tim wasn't in Arizona that year, right, Tim?
No.
What year was this?
This would be.
I'm just teasing. Okay, so he was a foul, disgusting person. Continue.
He was horrible. Anyway, he got in the car. It was a domestic violence situation, and he was running out of his trailer when we pulled up, and so we ran him down, and he smelled horrible, like a mix of alcohol, and he had just messed his diaper, and he couldn't utter anything without this slew of cuss words, and I was just thinking to myself,
this better not be the bishop.
This is back when I was a true believing member. This guy really needs the church,
Now
And
I feel called out.
The next sentence out of his mouth was, "I want you guys to let me call my stake president because he'll take care of things for me." And I'm like, oh, so we're not infallible. But it was horrible. I mean, to this day, I've never met a more horrible, vile, cussing, nasty person. And isn't it funny?
So on that note, I'll bring Joe onto the stage.
Hey, it's
And
Joe.
here comes Exmo
Uh-oh.
Joe Rollins.
We're not
raised in
Missouri yet.
locally.
Joe
here.
Rollins, raised in Mesa, Arizona. Curses like a motherfucker.
That's who it was. It was
I
Joe.
told you never to talk about that shit with my
That's
state
right.
president. I said never to say it.
We knew it was you, Joe.
Nah.
And he wasn't drunk.
What
He
year was
just
it?
used alcohol as a cologne. It's just the way he behaves normally.
That's right. Just put a little vodka right back here. Ladies love it. To this.
Nice. Yeah, just one more thought with
Okay, Kendall.
the persecution and stuff.
If you run
with the 40 arrests and stuff. I was taught that not only were they trumped up charges, but like anything allegedly bad that a Mormon or leader did was proof that it was true because it was persecution. So like,
Sure.
there's no way to get out of that loop.
Of course.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
What did
So I-
Joseph Smith do?
I hopped in.
What was the reason they put Joseph Smith in jail?
Which time?
It was
In
trumped
Nauvoo?
up. It was
Yeah,
trumped up
It was
charges.
always religious persecution. That was the only
Yeah,
reason
that's
every
right.
time that I was given.
They
It was the Book
were
of
they were
Mormon.
jealous.
For his
They were
testimony
jealous
of
of
the
his
Book of Mormon.
success.
They were
That's
afraid
right.
of the truth. They were wicked.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, Kendall. Get to the post office or your computer where you have to submit the documents.
File those papers.
Okay, yeah, we'll do. I'm so happy, guys. I have to share this with you. There is one thing that I've been looking for 6 months that is like not like the most critical, but it's like second tier evidence. And I thought I couldn't find it, and I found it, and my life is great for tonight.
Good for
Yay.
you. Congratulations,
Good for you,
Kendall.
Kendall.
Your prayer was
That's
answered.
exciting.
Yep.
I like how
Before you go,
a comedian once said, "How come it's always the last place we look we find something?" And it's like, well, who keeps on looking?
Right.
Yeah, right?
It's always the last
it was
place.
funny. Like I'd already taken a screenshot to submit as an exhibit for something else, and so I had already read it. But like I thought she used different words to allege the thing, and it was
the wrong
more
search.
benign. But it says the same thing that I remember. She just used different words, so that's why I couldn't find it.
That's right.
Love it.
In
Go get
my
it, Kendall.
experience,
Before
when
you go.
stop looking is when it happens. When you've given up and said there's nothing more, then the dam breaks.
true.
That's been my experience.
I hope
As-
so. I don't know about all the
So-
Jungian synchronicity stuff anymore, but maybe I'm open to it. Right.
Before you go,
Something there.
Kendall, for your curiosity, Ted Bundy was baptized in Salt Lake City on August 31st, 1975. He took discussions from pretty much the month he arrived in Utah officially when he was living up in the avenues in Salt Lake City. As your resident expert on all things Ted Bundy, you come to
Wow.
the source. I got the goods. I am not actively, technically, but I am still actually looking for Ted Bundy's pickup. Most people don't know this, but Ted Bundy had either a Ford Ranger or a Ford F-150 from mid 1960s, and it is still at large. Nobody knows where it is, and it may
Okay, so
have
he
evidence.
cognitively learned it, and he made the decision as an adult to be baptized. Okay, well there you go.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
there's a
probably
whole
because-
story there.
Because he knew it
They-
would give him access to more victims, I'm sure.
That's right.
He had the missionaries in his house while he may have had victims down in the cellar on that Thanksgiving in 1974.
Oh my gosh!
We
If
think
only we
he
had
may have
something
had-
like the gift of discernment, man, that would have come in
Wow.
handy.
That would have been cool,
His-
right?
His
couldn't smell
missionary, his lead missionary, Larry Anderson, in an interview he did with a friend of mine, used blood atonement to explain why he believes that Ted Bundy is actually saved in the celestial kingdom, that he is in spirit
Right,
paradise
because he
waiting for the
was
celestial kingdom.
killed in prison. He now is free to be in the celestial kingdom.
Right,
I-
because his blood atoned.
I know somebody who was on the
Let's
firing
see.
squad.
Who said
That's
that?
wild.
Songs. We'll do songs comment again. It's so
What's that?
weird. Everything Mormonism, you could say.
Tim, you knew someone on the firing squad?
Yes. That or Gary Gilmore's. I don't remember which. Dan Carpenter was Dr. Flammer's teaching assistant, and Dan was a prison guard at Point of the Mountain. And maybe it was Gary Gilmore. He was on the firing squad.
So
I know
Bundy-
Gary Gilmore. Maybe.
Bundy
I
got the
don't know.
chair in Florida.
yeah, Bundy
Oh.
got the chair in Florida. But
Okay.
I know, I'm sure you know this, Ex Mojo, but I think the thing that creeped me out the very most about the Ted Bundy case was finding out that his ward members wrote him cards and letters when he was in jail to say, "We know you're innocent, we're behind you, we love you."
Can't be guilty. You got baptized.
While the one woman who escaped was in the same ward, and they supported Bundy rather than listening to her.
Oh, well, that's no surprise.
I mean, he held the priesthood. He was more
He
important.
he was a priesthood
Mhm.
holder.
Yeah.
I don't
was
think that he actually
forgiven.
was a priesthood holder, because he was baptized in August, and then he was arrested in like September, and then I think he was technically excommunicated in like October. So they turned him around fast.
Yeah, I mean,
they-
can you imagine Ted Bundy, like the way they do it now, right, is you have to go through all of the different offices of the priesthood. Can you imagine Ted Bundy passing the sacrament
I can
with those
sadly,
crazy
and-
eyes?
and
So
I can
to
feel it.
Mormons, if Ted Bundy
Imagine
was
I feel it.
excommunicated, he's just as much as an apostate as Tim is.
That's right.
That's right.
and
Same category.
and me. So just go
And
with it.
Chad
Joe.
Daybell.
I don't
And
know how
Chad.
I managed to not get onto Alyssa Grenfeld's list. Does she not know that I've been excommunicated? I mean, come on.
Well, you know, Joe, those reels have a time limit to them. And so there were only so many people she could
I'm
include.
just not important.
I'll have
I'm
to
missing it.
You're
Oh,
important
here it
to
is.
listen to
My
it.
my office is such a mess. I think I have it here. Hold on. Okay. I think Randy will write this. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I was looking for it. Okay. I'm going to give you 3 guesses. Gene,
It's the Karnak
not you.
moment.
3 guesses.
I remember
is-
Karnak.
What is that right there? But pull
Oh,
out your
I know what it
pencil.
A
is.
rope
Please
and a
work
bar
this.
of soap.
Nope.
A
That
piece
is
of
not-
Ted Bundy's garbage bag.
I got to go with part of a parachute that failed.
DB Cooper.
D.B. Cooper.
DB Cooper's parachute.
Yeah.
Now, there's a Mormon connection to D.B. Cooper that
I
some
know.
guy.
Yes,
Sorry.
there
I
is.
did a whole video on it.
That's
Don't
right.
leave
Right.
us hanging
From
here.
Megan.
This is from Kevin M. Sullivan, author of The Bundy Murders, sent this to me. He says, "This is an actual piece of a Glad trash bag that was part of Ted Bundy's murder kit, a kit he lost after his arrest in Utah on August 16th, 1975. That was the arrest that the members of his ward, his singles ward, bailed him out on.
Oh my God.
Has had possession. Oh, wait a second. Has had possession of Bundy's implements of murder for many years now, and was kind enough to give me one of the large trash bags when we met in 2005. The attached pieces from that bag signed Kevin Sullivan."
Like, okay,
So-
can we just pause for a second to say the church does not have a budget for janitors to clean the toilets, but apparently they have a budget for bailing out freaking Ted Bundy?
Yeah, it was a somewhat informal thing, but people really in his ward, they really like. Even crazier thing is when the police department, when the Salt Lake County Sheriff's Office had contacted the state president in Salt Lake and said, so your youth group, one of your university wards, I think it's 6th Ward, is going on a retreat this weekend. They're like, yes. And they're like, you're going to want to be advised. We're advising you that they will be followed, and you're to not engage with anybody there. We're following a suspect. And the stake president, like,
Wow.
you're what?
Oh,
They're
what?
like, you're not. Yeah. And so they knew that somebody in their group was being followed by the sheriff's office, out of the county even. So it was interesting. It's like, imagine keeping that secret. Apparently we're sending all the kids up with the police checking in on them in case one of them is dangerous and done something wrong. Well, it was pretty
I'm
wild.
surprised you used Glad bags because I use Hefty. I mean, if I'm putting a body
All the way.
Yeah.
There's actually it's actually been a whole conversation. This can turn really dark really fast, but basically, my friend Heidi Love and I, we talked about this a lot, right? And I said, "What do you think about the possibility?" And Megan, did you and I have talked about this? I
No,
don't remember.
because I the show that you and I did together on your channel, we managed to get through the entire hour without talking about Lori at all.
Lori
So
Vallow.
it was crazy. Yeah.
But Ted Bundy, we think he actually used predation to get rid of the evidence. Like, he needed the bags. He would cut the girls up and he would put them in the bags, and then he wouldn't bury them. He said he didn't bury them very deep. He would basically bury them under, like, roughage. They're just whatever he could find, leaves and stuff.
Leaves and sticks,
basically hoping that the bears and cougars would find it and carry it off. And it worked. To this day, all that we have of any of those girls are the girl who was found right here up the canyon, about 2 miles from my house here, and then the patella, the kneecap of Debbie Kent. And that's it as far as remains go.
I'm still waiting for a cougar to carry me off.
Yeah.
I thought that was your wife, Gene.
Yeah, don't you have one there in the house?
She did attend BYU, I'll have to say that.
But you're so tall. I mean, how is she going to pick you up and carry you off? I don't know about that.
That's right. So let's move to Nauvoo. So there's some crimes that we haven't. There's one. Before there was a big crime. Tim, were there any little crimes in Nauvoo?
Counterfeiting, piracy.
So there were rough customers who were Mormons because probably the same thing. They could get the priesthood, get a home teaching route, become elevated, become an elders quorum president, and have some status, and pretend to be. It's the position a con man would want, right?
Right.
So I'm confused. There was piracy involved, but I don't remember any ships in the Nauvoo period. So how did that work?
Steamboats.
Oh. Okay.
Oh.
The Maid of Iowa. He owned the Maid of Iowa.
I was joking, but you actually came with a real answer. I respect it.
He married the Maid of Iowa.
What?
I thought he married the Maid of Iowa or sealed the seal.
No, it wasn't a marriage. It was a spiritual wifery.
Spiritual wifery.
Well, that's the other thing you had going on. You had John C. Bennett and his spiritual wifery or wifery, and Joseph's polygamy. Oh, you had abortions going on because
there's good evidence. I always have to preface that by saying there is good evidence to suggest that John C. Bennett was performing abortions in Nauvoo. Mm-hmm. Historical evidence, documents, records, not just ex-Mormons made shit up.
Right. I think Maven said on one of her shows on Mormonism Live that the Bible actually has sort of remedies for abortion, like certain types of poisons that you can eat that don't kill you, but they kill the baby. And that is being able to abort has been something women have had the power to for a long time, thousands of years, because they're personally invested in that business, we'll say. But anyhow, so what was the big crime that Joseph Smith did?
Destroy the press.
So he got the council to order a destruction of the press as a nuisance, a public nuisance.
A public nuisance.
So
Now,
it was the city council, right? And so he was basically the mayor and also the king of the Council of 50. He declared himself king.
Right. He was general of the Nauvoo Legion.
So he held all of these powerful positions, and he basically got his cronies to go and destroy the printing press that printed a negative hit piece on him.
I'm sorry, you said cronies. I don't know if you realize that. You're supposed to say the Nauvoo City Police. They were
sorry.
City Police. And
they were deputized.
They were. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, yeah. But the interesting thing I didn't know until I did a debate with or a conversation with one of these never was Joseph, polygamy deniers, was what I went back and looked over. I didn't realize that I think it was William Law and two others. I think the Higbees or the Fosters, one of the Higbees and one of the Fosters were actually on the city council. And they had to kick them, in their order of business, they had to kick them off of the city council so that they could, in an after hours.
Because they wouldn't have done it.
Right. Well, because they were in the Nauvoo Expositor. Right. They were part of they were the ones that were being punished. So they kicked them out so that they could just have, write whatever they want, do whatever they want, and destroy. I mean, the whole thing was so mobbish. It's so funny that, Joseph Smith used to, in the review of the Nauvoo Legion, he toasted everybody. He pours himself a drink and toasts and says, "I toast to you the overthrow of the mobocrats." And it's like, who are you talking about, Joseph? That's you dummy.
You're the
also,
mobocrat.
I have to issue one correction. You said polygamy deniers. It is actually monogamy affirmers.
I know what
Just
I said.
kidding. I said what I said.
I said what
and
I
I
said.
excuse not myself, as Joseph Smith says.
I think it's ironic that the destroyed printing press was owned by the Law family.
Yeah.
Ironic.
Well, and
William Law.
Ironic.
See now, and there's tons of crime and stuff around actually surrounding the Laws, because they were accused of cheating the church and or Joseph Smith, as I understand it, in land deals. But that's also what one of Joseph Smith's wives I recently discovered, the one who had descendants. I'm trying to remember her name. Who had a descendant that they disqualified as not being Joseph Smith's descendant, Josephine. What's her name? Well, anyways,
where she told her daughter that Joseph Smith was her dad.
Mary Elizabeth Rollins Leitner's daughter, Josephine Leitner.
No, is it? Oh no, I don't think it was Josephine Leitner. It was it was another one. Anyways,
she named her Josephine because she thought she was Joseph's daughter.
Right.
Correct. But this is the one whose husband took off after he and the stake president got into a legal battle. He was the guy who owned the drugstore, was the husband of this woman. It turns out
Mr. Drucker.
He was a Thomasonian druggist.
Yeah.
Oh crap.
Yeah, that sounds right. Right?
We'll just say Mr. X.
Was it Pomeroy?
Yeah.
No.
Lion. Yeah.
Windsor Palmer
Lion.
Yeah, Windsor Palmer Lion.
Windsor Lion.
Windsor
it turns
Lion.
out that you remember when they were trying to disqualify Joseph Smith as practicing polygamy by DNA tracking everybody, Hugo Perigo in their group. That line, basically what they proved was pretty reasonably, according to them anyways. I don't know how good Hugo Perigo's science is. I take him at his word. But they proved that of all scandals, Windsor Lion's daughter is his daughter. That's the,
Right.
that's a big scandal.
Right.
Mormon man fucked his own wife, got her pregnant.
Exactly.
That's the scandal. It's like, how dare you? That's Joseph's wife. Don't you knock her
Gross.
up? But it just happens to be right before he had sued was it Marx, the stake president?
William Marks.
William Marks was
I
the
think
stake president of Nauvoo. Yes.
He'd sued him, and the church excommunicated him for airing personal laundry out in the open.
Yes.
He got pissed because he got excommunicated over, you know, when he felt he was in the right, and then fled to, like, I want to say like Nebraska or something. And he's like, come on, you know, Sylvia, let's just go. She's like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm staying right here. As soon as he's out of the picture, she marries Joseph Smith. 8 months later or something like that, Josephine Lyons is born, and she maintains on her deathbed, Sylvia maintains to her that you are the daughter of Joseph Smith. So that's how I understand the story. Anyways, you're welcome to correct me.
There you go. And William Marks, Emma Smith actually favored William Marks to be the successor to Joseph Smith right away. She supported William Marks's claim, because back then the stake president was like the next person in line. The apostles were traveling elders, and they were the people that weren't in the normal church. They were out there in the countryside.
The apostles were the traveling high council. And they're
traveling high council. They were below the stake high council.
They were below the prophet, the patriarch, the high council, and then the 12. Yes.
That's right.
But they said no, because then it would have been a church full of Marxists.
Right.
But that's actually an interesting tie-in to modern Mormon crime with that succession claim, because I don't know if you can still go to the church's website and read President Hinckley's talk from, I think it was 1981, after they purchased the Joseph Smith III letter, the letter in which supposedly Joseph Smith had told Joseph Smith III in like a patriarchal blessing, and it was a Mark Hoffman forgery. And that's when President Hinckley, right, and that's where Mark Hoffman got, or no, I'm sorry, get my corrupt Mormons mixed up. That's when Gordon Bintner Hinckley stood up in front of the whole world and said, "Yeah, but Joseph, okay, so yes, this is real, and we traded, you know, with the Community of Christ or with the Reorganized Church some documents so that we could get it. It's legit, apparently." But then also remember, Joseph Smith told a lot of people that they were going to become his successor. And I'm like, boy, that had to have been huge back then. I don't think anybody had ever admitted that. Oh, yeah, Joseph Smith was always promising everybody. He was promising, what's his bucket out in Montana? You're going to be the next prophet. And then his boy was supposed to be, and then the patriarch. But it does seem like up until pretty late in the church's history, there was an assumption that the patriarch was the next in line, or at least was in the hopper just in case it became necessary, right? And that's why they had to
point out
do it.
That is classic cult leader technique, to promise more than one person that, like, you're the most important one, you're the next in command, you're going to take over as soon as I die, to promise it to multiple people to gain their loyalty. Classic,
right? Pit them against each other.
Yep.
Pit your followers against each other. Yep.
Well, but also give your followers some buy-in and a reason to hang on and a reason to keep following your crazy crap and covering up all your lies and all that kind of stuff.
If you are Joseph Smith's successor, you're never going to allow anybody to try and prove that he is BS, right? No, I'm his successor, so you like him, and we all like him, and he's you know, he's right.
It's like a leadership Ponzi scheme.
It really is. You have to bring in other people in order to make any commissions, but at the end, everybody, the top guys, run off with all the money.
It's been multi-level Mormonism since 1830. We'll just say.
Yep.
It really has. And I say that as a person who worked for MLMs for like 15 years. Right? Okay.
Oh my goodness.
I had a stint in there as well. Yep.
Oh yeah, you know, I've got
You did a stretch?
I did. So, you know, on one side of my family, I have serial killers, and on the other side of my family, I have MLM people. So it's been a carnival. My whole life has just been a carnival. It's wonderful.
Stick
different from my
with the
family.
serial
On one
killers.
side I had
man.
serial killers, and the other side I had victims.
No, those were on the same
it's a-
side.
That's just
It's a
in
wonder
my
you married her.
household.
Oh,
Megan,
wow.
are you related to Jodi Hildebrand?
I'm not, thank God. However, Jodi Hildebrand's niece did do my tattoo, though. I do have to say.
See, I knew there had
Okay,
to be a
cool.
connection. That's a nice tattoo.
Yes. Say her
Thank
name
you.
or their
Um,
name, I mean.
Jessie Hildebrand. Jessie used to work at
In Salt Lake.
Electric Cobra Tattoo in Seattle, where one of my
Seattle.
daughters lives, and that's where I went and got this beautiful thing done.
Cool.
And then
That's nice.
now Jessie lives in Berlin, I believe, and so it's a
Wow.
rare treat for them to come back to the States and do stuff. But
I remember
yeah, that
crying
was
when I heard Jesse's Mormon story.
oh yeah, it was amazing. And I'll tell you, I didn't realize until I went and got it done and we started talking how much we had in common. And I was the last tattoo of the evening. The owner went and closed the shop down, and it was just the two of us, and we were able to talk about some things that neither one of us could ever say in a public interview, and it was just an incredibly healing experience to have that connection with them.
And you women
Wow.
tattooed the night away. That's pretty. That'd be the
Wow.
good name of a book, right?
I
Tattooing
was
the
just
night
going to
away.
say the last tattoo of the evening is the great name of a book.
Yeah.
The last tattoo of the night.
Yeah.
Yep. I
So
might
let's
be
see
the
the-
only person in the history of the world who got a tattoo and then went and had tequila shots afterwards. But that's a story for another time.
So Joseph Smith was in Carthage jail because he was accused of a crime of treason. Treason is a crime
Well-
against who, Tim?
Not just that, but of trying to kill Boggs, too.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
what's
Lil
a side
Burn
light?
Boggs, the governor.
That
It
is-
was
Attempted
light
murder is
treason.
nothing to Joseph Smith. But anyway, but let's stick with that. Treason against who?
Sam, Missouri.
state of
The
Right.
state
no,
or the
of
country?
the country.
Well, it was the country. It was
Oh, well.
considered the country, I believe,
Country.
was it not?
No, it
I-
was
Yeah,
the
because
state.
he was acting as a law unto himself, right? Going against the Constitution.
Well, remember, wait a second, though, that the city charter, that they had
Gave him-
arranged for the city charter to have some,
What do you call it? Super constitutional powers.
yeah, they had superpowers.
Yeah.
over-
But if you ignore, the fake city charter for the fake city that the fake mayor was fake leading, he was technically attacking freedom of the press, which is a
That's right.
constitutional right.
First
And
Right.
so, in my opinion, it would have been against the country. But
So here's the question for Megan. Had Joseph Smith been taken to trial,
Okay.
would he have represented himself?
of course he would have. Who better to represent
It's about
him
that dumb.
than the prophet, the mayor, the king of the Council of 50? I mean, if you can't represent yourself under those circumstances, who are you, Lori Vallow? God, come on.
I will. You laugh, but I will point out he was technically a judge at that time. So
That's
right,
true
so-
too. Yeah,
Yes, he
judge,
was.
jury, and executioner in the city of Nauvoo.
And that,
He
I don't
controlled
know if this
everything.
is the kid. Wasn't he the judge after? There was a really connected guy. I'm trying to remember. It was the Higbee's dad passed away, and he was the judge in the town, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
And so- Yeah.
It'll come
These are the
in.
Higbees who joined up with
Was it
William Law
Elias?
to publish the
Elias
I
expositor.
think so,
Higbee?
yes. Yes.
Elias
I think
Higbee.
yes. Elias Higbee. Yes. Yes.
So
yes,
here's
yes.
my question. If you represent yourself and there's nobody to hear your opening argument, do the trees actually acknowledge?
That's
Never
right.
mind.
Guilt.
I'm lost.
There you go.
I think that's the point at which you have to go to Carthage for trial, and that's how.
That's
there
right.
you go.
That's right.
So-
county seat.
Go to the county seat.
So
Gotta go to
we're
the county seat.
going through the decades of Mormon crime, and we're only into the
Well-
second decade of Mormonism.
Well,
I
and
tried
there
to
were
bring us current with with Jodi Hildebrand, but no one took the bait there.
Yeah, so I still want to go the time because, you know, Joseph Smith was killed in June of 1844. Were the Mormons kicked out of Illinois in July of 1844?
No,
or
not
August,
till 1846.
September, or
No.
any time in 1845?
No.
They weren't. There was no reason
define-
to leave yet.
Not
And you
till
know why they
February
left?
Define
1846.
Mormons. You have to define Mormons, and you have to define kicked out, and then you have to define leave.
But here's what I'm to say. Before the followers of Brigham left, it was okay to stay there. It was like, you know, sell your property, take care of your stuff, you know, stay or go. Emma saw no reason to leave. She felt,
But you need to remember, though,
right?
Gene,
What?
you need to remember they built the temple because they thought since Jesus didn't come to Missouri, he was going to come to Nauvoo. They really believed Jesus was going to come back to Nauvoo and save them.
But here's the crime. Because Brigham Young was accused of counterfeiting, harken back to the days, Brigham Young had to leave the state. And since he was going to leave, he wanted his followers to come. And so he said, it's time for us to go. And that's the biggest reason. There was a warrant out for his arrest. He fled the state and gave orders that now it's time to follow me. And Megan, would that be a crime in a way if you have your followers cross IC, Missouri, and maybe there were some deaths or people who died of consumption or other diseases after getting sick? You know, what is it? Pneumonia, other things could have happened, right?
Well, that's kind of what I was trying to assert when I was talking about Brigham Young being responsible for the deaths of hundreds of saints. It's like, if you are forcing people to make this journey, you know they're ill prepared and you know they're ill provisioned and you know that they're going to face peril. You know, how culpable are you in their deaths if they're preventable deaths?
No, but we didn't talk about the crime of Brigham Young taking over, how he took over.
Well, that's we haven't gotten to that part of the story.
Well,
that's the coup d'etat, the apostolic coup d'etat.
But we didn't talk about all the different groups that wanted, and the death of.
That could be another thing. We're just talking about true crime things.
This is a true crime.
Well,
somebody
died.
Well,
you got the
accusation.
Who was the Smith that died?
Samuel.
Was it
Samuel Smith?
Samuel may have been poisoned. Somebody poisoned Samuel.
He died. He died of bilious fever. Right?
Bilious fever.
Bilious fever. Right. But the thing is that bilious fever at that time was kind of code. It could be like anything, right, that has to do with a fever so bad that like you throw up or something, or like you soil yourself or whatever. But like poisoning was one of the ways that would happen. But wasn't that also how Alvin died? Alvin died the same way, right? The older brother Alvin, not baby Alvin.
Alvin died of that getting that thing stuck in his stomach.
That's what I'm saying.
The chalky thing or something. I can't remember exactly what it was.
Was it a bezoar?
Like mercury?
Yeah, he had like a blockage. He had like a blockage. He got constipated. He died of constipation. But
what a way to go.
Right? Anyways, but they maintained Samuel's kids, right? His daughter maintained that she knows that he was poisoned by Willard Richards, right? Or no, not Willard Richards. Weird looking guy, really weird looking Danite dude.
You just described all the Danites.
I did, didn't I? No, it wasn't John D. Lee, and it wasn't Hickman. It was
Alpheus
the other murderer.
No, what was that? What did you say, Gene? No, it was
one of the biggest murderers in all of Mormondom. Is he the guy that had notches on his belt for protecting Joseph? Who was Joseph's bodyguard?
Porter Rockwell?
Oh, that's
Porter Rockwell.
Noble. You're talking about Joseph Noble?
Joseph Bates Noble. Porter Rockwell and Bill Hickman.
I'm looking it up.
They're the two like gunslingers.
But I think it was. I mean, they do say that Willard Richards may have been involved in it because Willard Richards was working in practicing medicine at that time in Nauvoo, and he supposedly was part of the team that was treating Samuel H. Smith. Is that right?
People in Nauvoo got malaria, consumption, and bilious fever was the basic things they died of.
Joe, what does your shirt say?
Not temple worthy.
Not temple.
Oh,
My wife gave me this shirt.
dang.
That's when you know you married right.
That's right.
I wore my
But
shirt today that says,
Who was it,
I gave
Joe?
up my eternal salvation for coffee.
Let's breathe through some more of the 1800s and early 1900s and get to some things. So
Now-
there's the Mountain
now-
Meadows Massacre, which is probably a crime.
Wait.
We want to get to the more of the modern ones.
I'm just going to go ahead and plug this book one more time. Vengeance is Mine, The Mountain Meadows Massacre and Its Aftermath by Richard E. Turley Jr. and
Hang it
Barbara
up.
Jones Brown.
Hold it up. Hold it up, Dave.
I
Hold
Isn't
up,
it
get
lovely?
my copy too. It is a nice cover. Yes,
It's a beautiful cover. This is
we
the
both got
hardback
ours at the
version.
same time.
We did, and I love the
Signed
map.
by the author.
I love maps, and I absolutely
too.
love all of the maps that are in here. And I do have an inscription from the author. And if you're lucky, I will introduce you to her. Just
That's
kidding.
right.
Jean introduced me to her. That's why I'm saying that.
In a way.
So we saw each other at Thrive in St. George. And what happened to the group view? People don't want to look at me. She got finished with her talk at Thrive, and I was sitting near the front of one of the rows, and she was exiting, and she passed by me, and she grabbed my arm, and she goes, "I want to meet you." And I was like, "I want to meet you." So we had a little fangirl moment. It was great.
Well, that's fun.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
Kinder Kim says modern true crime might be another show. So we can go at Tim's, according to Tim's watch.
Well, it's Tim's living room is, Tim has the hours for his living room.
But
so.
he's supposed to allow the guests to do whatever the hell they want. He was a good host, right? Mi casa, su casa, right?
So you want to get to the modern
and I
stuff.
want to actually call Kinder Kim. Why don't you hop on real quick and say hi and test the equipment?
Test your iPad, Kinder Kim.
See if it works. See if it works out. Because
so, what other crime were you going to talk about in the 18th century, 19th century?
So, like almost all of Brigham Young's actions, right?
Everything Brigham Young ever did or said. We can start with, Brigham Young, like you were saying, Jean, Brigham Young taking over the presidency of the church. He's sort of crowbarred himself into that leadership position. And one could argue he stole the presidency of the church. And when you steal a position like that, you also steal all the power and influence and money that comes with it.
Everybody needs to read the chapter in Mike Quinn's Origins of Power, where he talks about how the Smiths got together and they had these benches set up, and somebody went and poured shit all over him, cow manure and stuff all over the benches. And that's when Samuel died, about that time, if I remember right.
So what we could do, Tim, is when we have like no idea what show to do, we'll just have you read Mike Quinn to everybody for a show.
No, that's okay. I told Joe Joe's never read that. He needs to read it.
I haven't ever read Hierarchies of Power.
It's online, so you can download a PDF and read it for free. So.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Kinder Kim has taken the challenge.
So I can show you something modern if you guys wanted to switch to something modern.
Where should we start in the 20th century? Where do we want to start?
Well, I mean, we could start at a lot of places, but the one I have queued up for you is Tim Ballard, if anybody's curious about
I was going to ask if it was before the Laffertys or after, just because I think the Laffertys are the first
a new generation.
It does start a new generation of
I was at
crime.
BYU when that happened. I was at BYU when the Lafferty's and the Hoffman stuff happened.
Well, and there's
Here in
the
the
Elizabeth
American court.
Smart thing. The
The what?
prophet
That's
that
it. That's
kidnapped
turn of the century.
Elizabeth.
Wait, Randy, go again.
The Elizabeth Smart thing.
That's
That
later
was-
on.
Yeah, that. Well, yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
that's 21st century.
That's 21st century.
Oh, we're back.
Okay,
We're still
so-
back in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So not much happened that we really know about. I mean, there were murders and stuff, of course, but
Well, I
Not
mean,
much happened. Just a few
Yeah,
light
Bundy.
murders.
but I mean,
You had
Yeah.
Bundy and you had the Laffertys.
You
and
had
then
The
you had
Lafferty's
Bundy.
came
Yeah.
first, right? And was it Lafferty's first and then Bundy's?
no,
And then
Bundy
Mark
and then
Hoffman?
Bundy.
Okay.
Bundy,
Bundy and then
Bundy was
Lafferty,
first.
Hoffman.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then
And
you had
Bundy,
when was Israel Keys? Wasn't Israel Keys around that same time? Wasn't Israel Keys in the 80s?
I don't remember now that you're saying
Israel
it.
Keys.
I did
Yeah.
a whole deep dive on this because
Oh crud.
I was like, when was the last time that we have on the court record somebody quoting Book of Mormon scripture or something like that in the actual court record, like not just talking about it on the periphery of the crime, but actually into the court record.
Oh man.
And I need to go look that document up because I had it all documented.
I don't know about the first. I mean, I
Oh.
think that the Lafferty brothers, they definitely talked to the police about like the prophecies and things, but a lot of that was like the prophecies that Dan and Ron were coming up with right while they were drinking, which apparently that's where I learned that apparently that was part of Joseph Smith's process too, is they would get smashed on wine, and
That's why you're not supposed to drink.
Israel Keys is 21st century.
So I'm gonna have to disagree. I think Ted Bundy wasn't late 70s and
74.
the Laffertys okay, so the Laffertys were 84.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lefty's 84.
Correct the record.
So in the trial, during Ron Lafferty's trial, his defense leaned on his religious beliefs to argue insanity, claiming his actions were driven by his interpretation of Mormon theology. The prosecution countered that his beliefs, while extreme, did not meet the legal threshold for insanity. Obviously, he was convicted, and then he only died in 2019, like not too long ago, and then Dan got a life sentence. But it says that the Book of Mormon itself was not directly quoted in trial testimony, but the Lafferty's actions were framed by their interpretation of LDS teachings, including, the blood atonement thing. But also it was brought in about Nephi's justified homicide, killing of Laban.
Right.
So there's that.
Yeah. The closest with Bundy was that what's his name? The reporter, our favorite reporter, your favorite reporter and mine, who worked for the church back then, was sitting in the Carol DeRanch trial. And that's when Larry Anderson and John Green, the missionaries who had converted Ted, tapped him on the shoulder to say, "Hey, aren't you the guy who covers, for the Deseret News is covering the trial? Why are you so mean about Bundy?" And he's like, "Well, I just cover, the prosecution goes first, so I'm just covering the prosecution. Why do you care?" And they're like, "Well, we're the ones who baptized him." And he's like, "Okay, well, now you're the interview I'm not allowed to get." Because he works for Deseret News.
Oh,
But
wow.
yeah. Oh, what's his name? Why am I blanking on his name? The reporter, investigative reporter.
The journalist.
Yeah, he used to. He was on Mormon Stories a bunch. He did
Oh.
all the Tim Ballard work. He's the guy who blew up the
He's
whole
the American Crime Journal.
Yes. Why are we all in our 40s or beyond and can't remember?
I don't know.
names?
My brain.
You're not
cells
talking
are
about
kind of-
Packer.
Yes, Lynn
Packer.
Packer.
Lynn
Thank you.
Packer.
Lynn
Lynn
Packer.
Packer.
Lynn
Yeah.
Packer.
Scared of you, Gene.
So yeah. Anyways, Tim Ballard.
Well, wait. Mark Hoffman.
Oh no! Come on.
Exmo Joe really wants to talk about Tim Ballard. Well, Mark
No,
Hoffman
wait.
was what, 85? was Mark
Well,
Hoffman?
I think I first met Mark in 82 or 83, maybe
And so you're
84.
lucky to be alive then.
Well, me and Art Hoyos were at Grandpa's book, Ernest Strack's bookstore, and he was showing us Kirtland Safety Society notes and Deseret money, if I remember right.
Which it turns out some of
Were
those were forged, right?
They
Or was it
all
all
were.
of them
They
were
probably
forged?
all
They
were
were all-
forged.
They probably all were. Yeah, when you go back and look at Mark Hoffman, you kind of have to assume, right?
Right.
Right.
And
Well, I
and
mean,
then
with his
and
other documents, like I thought that he established himself as a trader of like good documents.
oh, he was doing Lincoln, Mary Baker Eddy,
Washington.
Franklin, Washington. He was doing all kinds of people. He wasn't just.
But like
Mormon.
some of his Washington documents were fake, right? Like they turned out with like the ammonia spray scandal.
I think
figured
the
out.
only real document he found was the John Taylor diary.
Oh, see, I thought the whole reason that he was credible is that he had established himself somewhat as a credible purveyor. And I guess I'm wrong about that.
No, he had established himself. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they were all fake, except the only thing I know for sure that we know for sure was real was this John Taylor diary that somebody gave through his hands to the church, and BYU Studies published it. Remember that?
Yeah.
Because
wow.
I
was
doing.
Everybody say hi to our new member.
Hi, Kinder Kim.
Hi, Kinder Kim.
Hello.
So,
hi.
What do you want to say about yourself?
I got nothing.
You got nothing?
I don't believe that.
Kim is going to be the next podcasting superstar.
Cool.
Okay, cool.
You guys are blowing me away with your church history. I mean,
we don't know anything.
Don't
you know that? I don't know anything.
You tell us.
Look, I thought I knew something. I read
church?
Mormon Enigma, and I thought I knew a lot.
She's great. I said she, but
did.
there's two of them, right? They're both great. But
They're both
Tippett's
great.
Avery, I've been digging into her. I haven't read Mormon Enigma actually. It's on my list. But she did a great thing about Joseph and Emma's son, David, and his life. She wrote papers about him. He was the one who was supposed to usher in the millennium. He's supposed to usher in the second coming. And then he went nuts, and they put him into an asylum for the last, 27 years of his life, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But did he really?
Fascinating. But there you go.
You're
getting into the spirit already, Kinder Kim. This is the way the Mormon true crime stories go.
Well, I also read No Man Knows My History.
Good.
Although I don't think it's on my shelf right now. I went through a purge and got rid of all my Mormon shit. So sorry, all my Mormon stuff. So.
You can swear. It's okay.
You can totally say shit here.
Shit is
Shit,
totally
fuck, damn,
acceptable.
hell,
There's no word
piss.
that isn't.
It's so versatile, you know. Bat
It
shit,
is, yeah.
cat shit, rat shit, dog
You
shit.
can use it as a verb, an adverb.
He don't know shit. Are you shitting me? Yeah.
No shit. My favorite thing is whenever now that I have to read Mormon scripture for any reason, mainly for research and for explaining Mormonism to non-Mormon people, I really love to replace the "and it came to pass" with "I shit you not."
that new
And
Book
I
of
shit
Mormon.
you not, Nephi had to go obtain some ore. Imagine that.
Verily, I shit you not.
Exactly.
And in the German Book of Mormon, they've taken those all out.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What did they replace it with?
Brackets. There's two brackets
For some
there.
reason we're not hearing Kinder
Just
Kim
my
anymore.
favorite thing about the German language is that instead of coming up with a new word for something, they will just mush together 4 or 5 words. That's my favorite thing about German. It's like we don't have a word for defenestration, but we do have a word for opening the window and throwing someone out of it, and we're going to use every single one of those words to describe it.
Like Volkswagen's Fahrvergnügen.
Yeah.
And every syllable is angry. I don't know
Yes,
if Kinder
exactly.
knows
For some reason we're not
very
hearing
angry.
Kim.
Kinder Kim,
Uh-oh.
we can't hear you.
If you're swearing over there,
Are you
turn your
muted?
microphone on. Don't you? Yep. Oh, you can't hit. Okay. I have. Well, you'll have to record yourself swearing so that I can have it for.
Yeah, can you hear us, Kinder Kim?
Yeah.
Kinder Kim, you're up.
So anyhow,
in a
so
portal.
if you want to back out
and come back
come
in.
back in,
Like close
so
it.
you can
and
remove yourself and then request to come back in.
Real
Should
quick
remove-
on that though, on the idea on your idea there, Megan. I had joked with people, half joked. I wasn't joking. I was serious actually. That I was going to take the 1830 text of the Book of Mormon and just have and print it from the Church of Korihor. We are the Church of Korihor, so this is a sacred text to us because Alma 30, which was Alma 16, is in there. So I said, well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to publish our own version, like all these other Mormon these restoration branches are doing.
Yeah.
But I'm just going to have it insert not into every, and it came to pass. And it did not come to pass, right?
It did not come to pass. Because sort of like, I don't know. I mean, sorry guys, this is on my mind, but Lori Vallow's opening statement, Lori Daybell's opening statement, the evidence will show. The evidence will show. And I was about to go back through it today to say like that what the evidence did not show. The evidence did not show.
The evidence did not show.
And so I love that idea about doing that with the scriptures too. I think that's amazing.
Plus, you were saying stuff like the evidence will show that we need oxygen to live.
Right. And one of her most poignant questions of the entire trial was when she asked her brother, it is the year 2025, correct?
Yes.
I mean, we really needed somebody to read that into the record. That was important.
We did. Yes. That was
well,
absurd.
between that and did you spend their whole date with my husband talking about me? And that response.
Don't flatter yourself.
That response. Don't flatter yourself. We did not talk about you the whole time.
And then my other favorite has to be the green chili chicken enchiladas. Please tell me that some of you at least had the Mormon recipe of the green chili chicken enchiladas, because that was.
No.
It was in a Relief Society cookbook. I swear, I shit you not.
I shit you not.
It was a Relief Society cookbook meal. My mother made it. I, as a young mother, made it before I knew how to cook things that were actually delicious. It was basically that you just take shredded chicken, you put it in a pan with a can of green chilies, a brick of cream cheese, you roll all of that mess up into enchiladas, and you put it in a casserole dish with no sauce. Just sprinkle the cheese on the top, throw it in the oven. And that was the thing that my kids liked the most, I guess, when they were younger growing up. But it was terrible, horrible, bland stuff. But that was Lori's line of questioning to her brother was, when was the last time we saw each other? And he couldn't say. And she said, well, you don't remember my green chili chicken enchiladas that I made every year for 10 years, every time we got together?
Megan,
it
has cream of chicken soup in it too.
Oh, you're right. A critical ingredient.
Soup, sour cream, cream cheese.
Yep.
Yes, I have the recipe.
You cannot make almost anything from a Relief Society cookbook without two things. You need cream of chicken soup and powdered milk. That's got to come in there somewhere at some point.
My mother made them, but I don't think she used the Relief Society cookbook to cook them. But
it was a Mormon meal. Classic.
Whatever
so
revelation.
Is the green chicken chili thing, is that part of Mormon crime? Is that a true Mormon crime to have?
It is now. It's in the court record now.
No. Boiled chicken. If you want to poison the whole congregation.
Anybody who wants to cook them can go to the court record and find them.
That's right.
If she had done funeral potatoes, she probably would have been acquitted.
That'd be funny if they called it the
convict somebody over
green
over
chili chicken casserole murder case.
100 years from now. I mean, I actually did make funeral potatoes this last week, and they were damn delicious. But I have to say, I noticed that the recipe was lacking some critical ingredients like salt, pepper.
Potatoes? Did you use potatoes?
I did. So there's a there's a phenomenon here. I don't know if it is everywhere, but there's a product called Simply Potatoes, and it's a bag full of shredded potatoes, because who has time to shred their own potatoes?
Right.
And on the back is a recipe. They don't call it funeral potatoes, but they call it potato casserole. It does include cream of chicken soup, but it's basically sour cream, cream of chicken soup, potatoes, butter, and then you just mix all that together. Oh, cheese, cheddar
No
cheese,
hash
shredded.
browns. Right, shredded cheese. No
You
hash
throw
browns.
it in the oven. Well, that's the shredded potatoes.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
And so you throw all that in the oven, and then you crush up some cornflakes and mix that with melted butter, put them on top and toast them. But the thing that I found fascinating about that recipe is that there literally is no salt or pepper or any kind of other seasoning. And how do you eat potatoes without some kind of salt or pepper or something? I just don't understand. Like, it's this Mormon obsession with blandness. Like, we didn't have enough salt. We were not the salt of the earth. We had no savor. I don't know.
Are they just potatoes frozen? Or are they?
No, they were not frozen. They were just shredded.
Potatoes?
They were they were in that plastic bag, and so they retained their moisture, but they were just non-frozen shredded potatoes.
Oh,
my goodness!
Yeah.
That's like the milk in my mission. It was, you didn't refrigerate it. You kept it under your bed, but it had formaldehyde in it to preserve it, and it just came in cardboard boxes. And that was a warning they gave us, that the milk had formaldehyde, but we didn't care. And the Spaniards weren't dying from it, so we drank it. But it's
so that's how you've lived so long. You've been preserved.
I'm already embalmed, yeah. I'm pre-embalmed.
I think we might have derailed. It's probably my fault. I'm so sorry.
That's why you went to the funeral business.
There you go. He went into the funeral business for the potatoes.
For the potatoes. Oh, Sally.
We're going to advertise that show, by the way, before we end this whole thing.
Yes.
About our upcoming funeral show.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I'll think of some
I thought that had already happened, and I missed it. I'm glad we talked about it.
I'll send out the link when we get it in the can. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we allowed to eat funeral potatoes while we do the episode?
Let's eat funeral potatoes and green chili chicken enchiladas.
And no bakes. No bakes have nothing to do with any crime, because no bakes are heavenly. No bakes are the food.
No bakes are
the celestial kingdom.
Amazing. No, it's Captain Crunch that was manna that dropped from the heavens, but no bakes were up there. I'll tell you.
Okay, Debbie.
Tim wants to get back to true crime.
So we have 3.5 minutes left in the show. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh. Well, let's get back to Mark Hoffman.
Go ahead.
So,
take it away, Tim.
The second time was I was editing David Patton's diary, and I think I told Brent Metcalf about it, and Brent would tell people things. And Lynn Jacobs calls me and he says, I have an elder's license signed by Marsh and Patton. Do you want it? Huh? What? He told me he wanted like $200 or $300 for it. I said, I'm a poor BYU student and I can't afford it. Well, okay. And then about a week later, it showed up in church archives, and I got a copy of it there.
Oh, I was gonna say, you didn't have Gordy Hinckley's phone number. It's like, yo, Gordy, buy me a license.
Yeah. And the next time was at MHA. I think it was June of '85.
Mormon History Association.
We were in Missouri, and that's when Dean Jesse gave his paper on the Martin Harris signatures. I think 5 of which were Hoffman forgeries. And Mark was there, and Lynn was there. And I gave
a paper once, and I said, on the paper to my pet dog. That's the paper I gave. Right. But go ahead.
But you'd said that when you were like connecting Hoffman and other people, like when you were in the middle of that like even that even Michael Quinn was like into it. He's like, wow, these are real legit, right?
Well, Ernest Grandpa's books and I were talking one day, and we were trying to figure out how come Mark was so lucky. I mean, I'm working in the archives and I'm going through this stuff and I'm going, nobody's that lucky. Nobody is that lucky to find all these documents that he's finding. I mean, I had my suspicions around 83 or 84 that he was doing something.
Gerald Tanner that was the
that was 85. That's when the
pointer.
Salamander letter came out. And we all got copies. And MHA, Brent was selling copies and typescripts for like $1 at MHA. And then Dean did his thing. And then we toured all the different churches around Missouri. Get back to Utah, and October happens. And I'm doing BYU studies. We're doing the Salamander issue, and the bombs happen. And I think I was up in Utah. I was up the archives, I think the day before, if I remember right.
Was that what shut down investigation to him? Like, is that the point where somebody said, you know what, hold on the Hoffman documents until we figure out what the heck is going on with him? Or when does it dawn on the leadership of the church? It's like, oh, wait a minute. We've been taken here and in a very public way.
I don't know. I don't know about that.
Maybe they still think that there's something to the Salamander letter thing.
I have to say, I have to say that, I really loved Gordon B. Hinckley as a prophet. He was kind of the prophet during some critical points in my life. And I don't think that I've ever been more disappointed in a church leader than when I heard that he bought into that stuff. Right. I think it was so upsetting to me that, the power of discernment obviously does not work at all.
Well, but at the same time, it's like, it was like a kind of tacit confession, because it was like the reason why it was so effective, besides the fact that they were so anxious to get ahead of it, finally have one scandal that they can get ahead of, right? Was that, this Salamander thing, it's legit plausible because like there were stories about like a frog, and there were stories about, Joseph Smith's, sacrificing dogs and goats and crap.
I was editing Marvin Hill's article about that in the issue, and I was checking his footnotes and his sources. And I think I was up in the archives, I think the day before the bombs happened.
Wow.
I was going to go the next day, but they said, don't come because we're pretty much shut down. If I remember right. And then I was also doing research on William McClellan. I was doing a paper on him, and it was Christmas time, and 2 of the detectives came to my house to talk to me about it. And I told them my suspicions. I said, I think they're forgeries. It was Christmas because we had a Christmas tree, and I remember the Christmas tree.
I feel like it's a little bit of a cautionary tale because every once in a while I hear a story or a scandal or something, and somebody says, oh, this is going to take down the church. And I think, if the Mark Hoffman scandal didn't take down the church, what really can? Because here you have the very highest levels of church leaders who were deceived by this charlatan, and they actually paid out money to avoid the truth getting out, that there is possibly some magical thinking and some, crazy, weird shenanigans with the founding of the church. And they actually paid money for it and then came to find out that they had been duped.
They didn't pay money for it. What the church
I thought they did.
No, they go to a donor. Steve Christensen bought the Salamander letter. they go to a wealthy donor. Will you buy this for us and donate it to us as a tax
Well,
write-off?
Because the church can't afford it.
No, to me, that's the same thing. And that's why I say that the church paid money for it, because they may not have used tithing dollars for it, but it's the same thing today where Fair LDS is funded by a group that's funded by a group that's funded by a group that's funded by the LDS church, right? So it's the same, to me, it's the same thing.
Right.
They got very publicly caught paying for a forgery to try and avoid embarrassment for the church based on, I mean, that calls into question the founding of the church. And if a scandal like that doesn't take the church down, quote unquote, I mean, who are these people that think that they're going to take the church down for anything, really, honestly?
True.
Was the
really,
investor reimbursed by the church when they found out that it?
No, it's a
Of
tax
course
write-off.
They don't issue apologies.
Yeah.
No,
What am I
only the
thinking?
Pope issues apologies. Remember that. Only
That's
the
right.
most godly man who the most powerful man on the earth is the Pope. Okay, let's not kid ourselves. And he issued apologies, which to me was a fascinating thing about his administration. You know?
So Tim, you have a question from Kinder Kim. Didn't Christensen die in the bombing?
Steve was the first one to die.
Yeah.
That
And then
morning.
the wife of the other person.
Kathy Sheets, and then Mark blew himself up the next day. He was going to meet. We talked about this, Gene. The guy that owns the bookstore in Provo.
Benchmark. Oh no, the other guy.
The lawyer.
Well, we'll just go on. The lawyer that owns it. What about it?
Yeah, he was going to meet him at Crossroads Mall.
Oh, right.
Mall? And he wasn't
and then
there.
Hoffman blew himself up.
And Mark went back to the car and blew himself up. Yeah.
So so Tim, your honest take on that, do you think that that was an accident, or do you think that it was intentional?
I think it was an accident.
Okay. Interesting.
I think that numbers just caught up with him. Are narcissists suicidal?
not generally.
No, yeah, generally speaking, they don't have remorse for their actions.
Yeah.
And they also have an inability to accept responsibility. And so as a general, like, again, I'm not a licensed mental health person. I just have studied a lot of narcissism, but in general, they don't think there's anything wrong with the way that they act towards people or relate with the world. And so they wouldn't feel any kind of shame or remorse that would make them want to not live anymore.
Yeah.
So you don't think that Lori would take her life in prison?
I think the only way that would be a possibility is if she has a moment of clarity, a devastating moment where she sort of feels the weight of the truth of what she's done. But I think she's deluded herself so far that I don't think that's really possible, because I don't know how much you followed, but she had that disastrous interview with Keith Morrison.
Yep,
where she came off as super delusional. She just wanted to get her narrative out there. It was not an interview. It was Lori grandstanding, etc. Well, then a couple weeks later, she does an interview with a very small local channel, Arizona Family. And all of a sudden in this interview, she's all smiles, she's compliant, she's answering questions. And she's really, trying to repair her reputation in the public. And what she says in that second interview with Arizona Family is that she believes now she has a new mission. She believes that she's been called to help these other women who are on death row or who are facing sentences. She's there to give them legal advice and spiritual advice and help. And she choreographs exercise routines for them. And she just basically believes that she's the prison mom. So she has moved from one delusion to the next. And I really don't think that there's going to be a moment where it hits her. I used to think because I personally have had these moments, it's always that moment right between awake and asleep where it's just you with yourself and you only have your own thoughts and your own actions and your own psyche to deal with, where that's kind of the most real, the most honest moment that you have, where you're confronting yourself and your faults and the mistakes you might have made that day. And that's the most introspective moment that we have, is that moment right before we fall asleep. It's just us and our conscience. And I honestly don't think that Lori ever has that experience. I used to hope that there was a moment like that for her where there's no mask, there's no performing, there's nobody else for her to put a show on for. And it's just her with herself. And I used to hope that she definitely would have that moment of reconciliation where it hit her what she had done and the lives she had ruined. But I don't think that that's really possible anymore. Now that I've seen that second interview where she's moved on to a next delusion, I think she's going to continue deluding herself into whatever makes her feel better. And I honestly don't have any hope that she's going to have that moment at all.
People in prison who have been found guilty of killing children usually don't last very long because if they don't take their own lives, the other prisoners will. So I'll be real surprised to see if she survives one way.
She's probably in protective custody then. She's PC.
Well,
she would have to be.
So I mean, for right now, I don't know. And we can't believe anything that Lori says. She says she's in lockdown 23 hours a day. I don't necessarily believe that that's true. But I do want to read something to you because I think this is important. It's important for us to understand the dynamics of what goes on. There was a Facebook post by an anonymous person in one of the groups that I follow, a true crime group. And this person says, the only reason I'm posting anonymously is because of my job. I work within the legal system and my curiosity got the better of me. So I wandered over to the jail to say hi to some old co-workers. And she's talking about the Australia jail where Lori's being held while she's awaiting trial. Sad to say, some of these women clap, yes, clap and cheer when Lori comes back. She's a leader and a hero in their eyes, yelling things like, you got this, girl. Jesus won't let you fail. And you can represent me anytime, saying God is on her side. Some COs told me that women seek her out and most don't know about her previous charges, or if they do, there's been no backlash. They have recovered kites, which are like the little paper airplanes they fly into the cells back and forth to each other, little notes, with women telling her about an issue, and she will respond with a Bible verse to help them through their issue. She talks about JJ and Tylee like they're still alive in present tense. She also tells them that she can speak to people that have passed, that she gets visits at night. She doesn't need sleep. There's other stuff like she hates the food and the underwear, but those are the ones that stuck out the most. Oh, and our married woman is very flirty with the male correction officers, but we kind of knew she would be. So it's disturbing to hear, that I mean, obviously these are women who are in prison. So give what credence you want to their mental state of being, but they see her, a lot of them, as a hero because she's out there representing herself and fighting her charges. Now, it'll be interesting to know if that tune changes now that she's been convicted, but I suspect that makes them even more endeared to her because she believes that she's got that persecution complex. She said it in her opening statement, or she tried to. It got objected to, but she said, the attorneys are the state, the cops are the state, the court is the state, and it's your job as the jury to protect me from the state.
Well, she hasn't got to prison yet.
Right. Well, she's been in Idaho, she has, but she's been in jail and not prison, which is a different thing.
When she graduates to prison, I'm telling you, I think she's in for a rough ride.
Could be.
Unless she can swindle all of them, too.
But I'll say really quickly, her changing her mission is right in line with Joseph Smith, right? Receiving a new revelation about what to do next after all things are going against you, and Mormonism in general. Like, hey, you can't become a state unless if you're polygamous. Oh, look, a revelation. God doesn't want us to be polygamous anymore. You are the worst racist church ever. Oh, in 1978, look, God loves black people now, right?
Yeah.
And so that's the revelation on the exclusion policy was, according to Nelson, a revelation, right? And then 4 years later, it's rescinded by what? A revelation. So Lori's revelation is right in line with all the revelations that put the church 20 to 50 years behind civilized society.
Convenient revelations.
Convenient revelations.
Rebecca and Landon did a show on that today about
That's
convenient revelations. So
and I predict what's coming next: gay marriage.
There you go. It's going to be a revelation.
I think so.
So here, Rio has a question for you, Megan.
Can we
do you think the next trial? Yes, we're going back to Hoffman. Do you think the next trial will be similar from behavior? I think that probably Lori will have learned some things in this trial. I think that she probably will have learned how to actually successfully subpoena witnesses. I think she will have learned that the witnesses actually have to have some kind of material contribution to the case. So I think she will have learned some things, and I think that we're going to see a little bit more of a robust defense from her. But at the end of the day, this is really about Lori taking her last moments in the spotlight. She knows that she's going to be in jail for the rest of her life. She's never going to see the light of day again. So, this is her chance to have a field trip and pretend to be a lawyer. It makes her feel good about herself. She gets some dopamine hits when she gets a witness to answer a question correctly. So yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of more of the same. And I think it's going to be similar behavior, except it'll be, lawyer Lori 2.0, where she has learned some things and maybe will correct some mistakes. But I think it's going to end up with the same outcome.
And actually, one last thing about Lori from me. What about once she was convicted, right? They took the jury out, and then the judge had some instructions. And what was all of that about? What's that called?
So it's called the aggravation phase, where the prosecution is allowed to admit evidence that proves that there were aggravating factors to the crime. For example, if it was especially cruel or heinous, if there was financial motive, which we know there was in this case, the prosecution can enter that evidence in order to give her a harsher sentence. And essentially, what would have to happen is that the prosecutor comes forward, offers this additional evidence. The family members can give some testimony there. And then the judge takes all of that into consideration for the sentencing phase. But basically what Lori said was, I don't want to listen to any of the evidence. She said, can we just stipulate to it? Meaning, can we just agree that there were aggravating factors? She didn't want to listen to more evidence. She didn't want the family to have a chance to speak. She just wanted to say, look, I stipulate to it. Fine. I'll just admit to it. Go ahead. And the judge said, well, do you realize that I could find independently some aggravating factors that could add time to your sentence? She said, fine. I'm just waiving it. And then the judge has to go through this whole thing of like, were you coerced? Have you had any drugs or alcohol? Are you making this decision of sound mind, et cetera? And she waived all of her rights in that area. And, she basically was belligerent and she was rude and she was nasty about it. And she just basically said, look, they've convicted me. Fine. I'm done. Go ahead. Aggravating factors, whatever. And so that's what that was about. But she won't actually be sentenced until after the second trial. So the Brandon Boudreaux trial will start at the beginning of June. It'll probably only last a couple of weeks in addition. And she'll be sentenced for both trials at the same time at the end of that case if she's found guilty.
Oh, gotcha.
So that's why there was no victim impact statement.
Right. Those will come in during sentencing after the next trial is over.
All right.
Gotcha.
Okay. Now,
Joe, you better have enough for all of us, whatever you're reading.
Yeah, I'm passing it around. This funeral potatoes.
But we have to now we have to go back to Hoffman. Tim,
Okay.
we got to finish
This
Hoffman.
is what I think happened. Is in the morning he carried a bomb that was probably already set. He got in an elevator. He rode up the elevator to Steve's office, and he left it outside his door. And it was armed probably from the time he got out of the car. And then he went to the Sheets' house, and he put a bomb there, and it was armed. And this is what I think happened. He was going to go meet Brent Ashworth in Crossroads, and it was armed. And probably when he got back into the car, he was trying to disarm it. And the only way he'd arm it would be to twist two wires together. And I'll bet you that when he was sitting in the car, that's why he blew his fingers off. This is just my supposition, that he was probably trying to twist the wires when the bomb went off. That's my supposition.
Yeah, that's actually a good theory.
Have you heard anything, Tim, or anybody heard about this? It's the recent events on Mark Hoffman. Heidi Love from the what do you call it? From her podcast. She was talking about how she told me several times, she's like, Mark Hoffman was going to give a big interview, and he said he was going in prison, that he was going to like name names. That's the way I understood it. And on the way to that interview, he took a terrible fall, and couldn't do the interview. There we go. Those are not no bigs. So I don't know what you're playing.
Those are not from heaven.
Wait a minute.
What is that? Are you eating a styrofoam cup?
It looks like a Nutella-filled marshmallow to me.
Chocolate filled
Mm.
marshmallow.
Oh my gosh.
Where can I get my hands on some of those?
Wow.
You unketo people.
So Mark agreed to confess to everything. And he didn't. The Tanners published the interview with the district attorney, I think. I read the whole thing. This whole thing started because of polygamy, because the church wouldn't acknowledge his grandmother's polygamous marriage or something like that. That's where it all started.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it all started with him being disgruntled with them not acknowledging a polygamous marriage. And it grew from there. Wow. So.
Wow.
Yeah. And
it just like that, like knowing that adds a layer to it that is just, it's the psychology of not being acceptable in your own religious culture.
Exactly.
And what that drives people to do.
Yeah. Yeah. So but he was forging coins. He was changing the mint mark on coins. He learned how to do that with electrolysis. So he'd been doing this when he was a teenager. And I don't remember exactly when it was he found out about the polygamy thing, but that drove it. And that he would mess with coins, with Rust. And remember Rust, Alfred Rust, I think, or whatever. He was a coin dealer, and he wrote the book on coins in Utah, if I remember right. And he was forging documents before that. I may have even met him at Sam Weller's books back in the 70s when I was there looking at some documents.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's wild.
I don't know for sure, but I may have met him when we'd go to Utah. Yeah.
Well, if you're going to have a side hustle, as a teenager, why not make it forging coins?
Exactly.
That pays way more than like working at McDonald's.
Yeah.
And I remember in the show Murder Among the Mormons, they sort of reenact Hoffman telling his fellow young teens to like look for treasure they're looking for treasure, and he hides the treasure, and he says, "Oh, look, I found some coins in
Yeah,
a jar,"
he did something like that too. Yes.
just like Joseph Smith.
Yeah.
What kind of scoundrel pulls a hoax like that? I mean, fake buried treasure.
So he
I
started
mean,
quite young doing this stuff. Yeah.
Only a cult leader.
I kind of have to admit, Joe, that my first wife and I did that. Only it was at a restaurant in Arizona called Mining Camp, and a very famous restaurant. And they sold candy rocks. And one of us would always, when we'd take the kids there, one of us would go out and plant these candy rocks around. And then we'd have a rock hunt. And
Is that by the Superstition Mountains?
I should have known.
Superstition Mountains. It was really fun until one of my kids tried to eat a candy rock that wasn't candy and broke his
Oh
tongue.
my
Oh no.
God.
You know, this actually reminds me of a family tradition that we had when we were doing our family reunions in Ogden, Utah, where somebody would get a huge, I don't know, they would make like a little wooden box that was like 4 feet by 4 feet. They would fill it with sawdust, and they would bury candy and, you know, trinkets, little rings and stuff like that in the sawdust. And then the grandkids would all go in and have to find it. And I'm just now like making the connection that it was basically kind of the same thing as like the treasure digging and all of that stuff. Like it all comes together in these silly family traditions that are like,
Well,
okay, we're going to hide some trinkets in the sawdust. I don't know. Is there anything in there? Maybe you should go check. I think my powers of discernment are telling me there's a treasure there. It's guarded by an ancient spirit. Say a prayer. Kill a goat. Do something. I don't know.
my friends and I would play pirates growing up. We'd be hunting for treasure around the neighborhood.
Booty.
Booty. Yeah.
Booty,
We
exactly.
Pirate booty.
you know,
That kind of
It's a-
booty.
it's a kid thing. I mean, you either played cowboys and Indians, played pirates, you played army, you played gangsters, you know, play all these different games. And it's part
Yeah,
of
and
growing up.
I always wanted a metal detector because I would see these people,
Yeah.
you know, out in a field or out at the beach or whatever, you know, with a metal detector, and they're, you know, digging stuff up and they're finding things that are valuable. Somebody lost a thing at the beach and I found it with my metal detector. It's kind of a compelling idea to think, you know, it's like the whole something for nothing idea.
Right?
Yeah. So anyway, but that's my experience with Mark. But then when I read the document and they knew that he was lying, that he wasn't telling the truth about some things in there. So otherwise, he has some deal with the district attorney or the attorney general that if he told the truth about everything, that he'd get a letter says, let's just sentence. I can't remember exactly. It's been too long, but and the Tanners got a hold of it and printed it, and they explained why, where he didn't tell the truth, and you could see where he lied. He's still lying. He never came clean. So
Yeah, that's why when people say like, "Oh, would you want somebody to have time taken off their sentence if they'll just tell you the details of the crime?" Well,
Right.
you're going to trust a convicted felon to tell you the truth about the details of the crime? Like, are you stupid?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, they're very honorable people, you know.
They're very honorable, and I'm sure, you know, presented with an agreement as such, they would sign it and they would honor the agreement because, you know, they are a gentleman and a scholar, therefore, of course.
I'm sure there were some that would tell the truth, though.
Yeah,
Probably
there
few and far
probably are
between.
some.
You know,
I think those ones that sort of have a guilty conscience, or they've sort of had time to reflect a little and they start to feel like, you know, I want to get this off my chest. And they would
Yeah.
feel relieved by saying it out loud. And honestly, Randy, I don't know if you feel this way, but so many family members have said that if Alex was still alive, that we would know all the details about all the crimes because he had that like guilty conscience of he wanted to confess everything. What do you think about that idea?
Man, I don't know. The jury's still out, no pun intended, but
Yeah.
I don't know. He's so cavalier about it all. If it was going to hurt his sister at all, I don't think he ever would.
Yeah.
If his
Would
sister
you
was
say
already put away, then he'd probably be, yeah, I did it. Yeah, that's
Would
cool.
you say he was nonchalant?
He was, yeah, he was very nonchalant. You speak
There you
French very well.
Nonchalant.
Nonchalant.
I am myself very chalant.
And Megan, I like your theory that she went back in and shot him. That Alex did.
Well,
the
that's
first shot.
not my theory. I actually don't believe that theory because I think there's a
okay.
lot of histrionics that would have to happen in order to make that happen. But we had in all of the things that Lori said and all of the things that Tylee said, they talked about the shot. I heard the shot. I didn't see the shot. I think they didn't know there were 2 shots until much later in the day.
Okay.
So
Well,
anyway, it's
To me, she would only.
tells me that Alex didn't kill himself. I know I've said that to you, Megan, before.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm just thinking something was given to him, or I don't know. He just doesn't strike me as one that would kill himself.
Well, he had that patriarchal blessing from Chad that said, "You've done a good job. You've served us well. You've served God well. You're going to know when it's time for you to cross over to the other side." So there was that. And then there was also sort of his confession to Zulema where he said, "I think they're using me as their fall guy." And he did say to her, "Hey, if anything happens to me, there's a bag of money in the closet," and etc. So I think he knew the end was near. Whether he caused it or not, I think is up in the air. But I definitely think that the rest of the inner circle saw him as a liability. And you're just never going to be able to convince me that that was natural causes.
That's what I meant. I don't think it's natural causes. He may have injected something in the name of his sister,
right,
to protect her or to comply with Chad's counsel, but I do not think it was a natural thing. He was a healthy guy.
Yeah, I don't know. There are other family members that are like, we do have a history of blood clots and whatever, but a bilateral pulmonary embolism, there's lots of medications that could cause that. He also, frequented Mexico to obtain supplies, shall we say, for whatever. So there's a lot of questions. I've had to get comfortable with the idea that I'm never going to have all of the answers. I just looked at Hex Mojo's face. What?
Supply
to get supplies
Mexican
from
supplies.
Her what?
Like Mexico, like candy or like?
I mean, the week before he died, he was in Mexico, and he would, sometimes obtain things you can obtain in Mexico that you can't obtain here.
Cocaine.
He was always looking for a bride.
You can get cocaine
from
here,
Russia.
I think.
Mexican coke.
Well, for South America, he was doing that tourism in South America, looking for his next wife or whatever. But I don't know. The speculation is that he went to Mexico and perhaps obtained some things that might have been harmful to some people. I don't know anything about it. I'm just passing along what other people have told me.
Same.
Some things that have been corroborated by other family members that was a thing that he did from time to time. And I'll say, living in San Antonio, it's not unheard of at all for people to go south of the border to have dental work done, to have plastic surgery done. It's cheaper down there. Although I've heard lots of horror stories of things gone wrong. But, if you need Viagra or if you need Adderall or something like that, there is, there's an alternative that is south of the border that is not a controlled substance in that country, that is pretty easy to get, and you just bring it back across. And, so it's just living in South Texas, it's just not unheard of. So when I heard that, I wasn't really surprised by it. He was an over-the-road trucker. We know that when Brandon Boudreaux was shot at, he made allegedly made a super long drive that day and made it happen, where most of us would be like, I wouldn't do that. But, for Alex, it wasn't that big of a deal.
And the name of this Viagra Adderall alternative for the reporting is what again?
For the reporting,
Asking for a friend, right?
yeah, no, if you're interested in the scientific chemical composition of that particular substance, if you're using it for reporting purposes for journalistic
Right.
integrity,
Well-
you could potentially email me. Maybe, I don't know. I'm just kidding. I
One
can't help
could
you.
One might do that. I might give your email to a friend. I'm just saying.
You could give my email to a friend. I can't confirm or deny that I would have any information related to any of that, because for legal purposes, this is all a joke.
Hey, and you know who we never mentioned was Jodi Arias. She's a
Yes,
scary one, too.
that's right. And you know what?
Right,
She was
tomorrow.
her case took place across the hall from where Lori's case took place. And I don't know if did you guys hear about this unhinged motion that Lori filed to have her case dismissed, where she called out the prosecutor, Trina Kay, for having a relationship with the attorney who prosecuted Jodi Arias and was
No.
later disbarred for misconduct.
No way. Well, that's a whole different show, I guess, because I got Jodi Arias stuff.
Oh
Okay.
man, we got to do a Jodi Arias show, because if I'm not mistaken, she converted to Mormonism for her boyfriend, whom she later stabbed to death.
Travis, he was in my ward,
Oh my gosh,
and a friend of my son's. And
Randy!
then I went to the crime scene. They asked me to go to the crime scene and see what I felt, to see if I felt the presence of, I used to do that for the.
Okay, I'm going to stop coming on these
You kind
panels
of blew,
where
you kind of blew
all of a
everybody's mind
sudden-
right there, man.
at 2 hour and 25 minutes into the show, Randy drops a bomb in the middle of the panel, and we're all just astounded. And then we're going to have to do 6 more episodes. My nerves can't handle it anymore.
Yeah, say that,
Randy
Randy.
was
Say
trying
that.
to get into the house, and I just walked up and went by her, and she's like, "Hey, how come you can get in?" I told her, because I see dead people. And I said, "Oh." And I sat in the room for 45 minutes asking not to be disturbed there at the crime scene. And it was horrible. Tim, I think you looked up the photos, didn't you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I did.
Horrible.
Pretty bad.
Randy,
yeah.
I just I don't know.
The police psychic report.
I was going to dismiss Megan a half hour ago. I was going to say Megan's had a long week.
I've had a long day, and this is
Megan, but the spirit told me to not do that.
This is literally hour 8.5 of podcasting for me today, and so admittedly my brain cells are a little bit fried, but I'm blown away. And also I don't know what to say, Randy. I don't know if you are the most blessed or the most cursed person that I've ever met.
Or the most delusional,
Definitely you're not the most delusional.
All I want to know is
it's in the book that I'm getting ready to publish this summer. So,
oh, cool. Randy, what I want to know is how close do you know Janet Russin? Do you know Janet Russin?
No. I do know James Van Prague, and I do know Alison Dubois, who are both.
And how many times have you been on a couple's ruse with Tim Ballard?
Right. That's down to it. Down to it. How many children?
My son, who was a Navy SEAL, wanted to work for Tim Ballard.
Oh,
and
thank
I
goodness
called him.
he
I
didn't.
said, don't
do it.
Talk about that.
Whoa.
I was actually going to go work out at the OUR gym, the CrossFit gym, when I was visiting my sister in Utah. And my brother-in-law was like, don't do it. I was like, okay, fair point.
You said, don't do anything with Tim. You'll just get hodered up.
Well, I'm not an MWBE, a Mormon with blue eyes. So I'm safe, apparently.
Oh, he only liked blue eyes?
That's in the court documents.
For Tim Ballard?
Yes.
Wow. I did not know.
He liked Mormons with blue eyes, apparently.
Lacey Peterson says JV may be one. That's true. Lacey Peterson is one that. And James, is it his last name is Watts that killed his
Yes,
whole family.
James Watts.
Yeah, it was. I don't
And I
know if
think-
it was LDS, but probably.
The Lacey Peterson case happened in Central California, started there, and then I think about 15 miles north of me, the Berkeley Pier was where he put her body in a boat or something. I can't remember for sure.
So
Yeah.
I happen to have the
It's not as good as Randy's thing, but you happen to have what?
What,
I
Joe?
happen to have the 2023 IRS filing, Form 990 filing for OUR rescue or Operation Underground Railroad.
really?
Pulled up right here. And you said
Yes.
gym membership, because they have their headquarters in Draper, right?
Yep.
Is a CrossFit gym. Speaking of
Yes.
cults. And and
Indeed.
their revenue in 2023 from gym memberships is reported as $272,722. Now, do you feel like they were doing $272,000 worth of business out of that gym
What
in
the frick?
Well,
Draper?
Let's take
Is it one-
$272,000 and divide it by, let's be generous and say $175 a month. How many members of the gym would they have to have?
Like 2,000? A
I'm gonna
couple
do-
thousand.
So 272,000 divided by 12 months. That's about 22 grand a month. Divided by, let's say, 175 a month for gym membership. They'd have to have 129 members. That's honestly not that outlandish, to
Maybe
be
that could
honest
be.
with
Yeah,
you.
100
That's somewhat
Might be.
doable.
I just thought of
That's
it
pretty
for
expensive
some
too.
Mormons, the city Draper actually has a silent D.
Right. Almost got me to do it out loud.
Ooh.
How can
Gene, I appreciate your rapier wit.
It's very cutting.
Indeed, it is.
Well,
Indeed, it is.
should we end it now and just say pick up with
Well,
the plot thickens, or
Yeah,
Joe
but you need
wants
to
to
do a
talk-
commercial
talk-
for. Oh, sorry,
so-
Tim, go ahead.
Joe wants to talk about Tim Ballard, I guess.
okay, let's talk about Tim Ballard.
we
Can you
barely
do
have
what?
a condensed
How-
version.
a condensed version?
So if you saw the movie Sound of Freedom about Tim Ballard, no, you didn't.
Not
You
yet.
saw a movie about Jim Caviezel and the fantasy that Tim Ballard wants people to
That they're
believe.
showing in the White House.
Yeah. And
Insanity.
anyways, so there were a lot of predictions before the election that if Donald Trump won the election, I don't know anything about. I'm a spiritual leader in the Church of Korihor. I don't make opinions, political opinions. That everything related to Tim Ballard would basically get dropped, and that apparently is what's happened. And now this man is just, as far as I know, he's free to go. And so, but anyways. I happen to be looking at the IRS filing for OUR rescue actually today because I do still occasionally true crime a little bit, even though I took down all my true crime content, and we're going to be putting it back in another version. Anyways, and happen to notice that in this filing, there is, first of all, in 2023 they raised over 50. They raised $43,896 in contributions and grants, whereas the year previous they had raised $27,637,000 in grants. So basically doubled in this year. And I'm like, okay, but then I had read a report saying, but they actually spent more money than they took in. So I've been looking at some of these. It's a lot to go through. But I happened to find 1.5 million. I could share this with you, or you could just believe me. One of their expenses is a company called MX4 LLC in Nad Al Shiva, Dubai, United Arab Emirates.
What?
For operations support, $1.5 million, and in 2023. And I happened to look up the website for MX4 in Dubai, and I think people would find it interesting. Maybe you would. Do you want me to share it with you?
Please do.
Yeah.
We'll do it real quickly. We'll do it quickly. So I give it to you, Gene. If you want to see it, you can.
So
you can
what's happened with all the women suing him?
Maybe that operation is buying land around the temple that's going to be built in Dubai so they can make more money.
Your guess is as good as mine. Look at this website, right? This is MX4 in Dubai, and the website home says connecting continents, connecting people. MX4 is a Dubai-based management consulting firm that is delivering solutions to clients all over the world. We offer an impressive portfolio of professional consulting services that are completely customizable for your business, whatever your needs may be. We can make it happen. Get in touch with us today. I mean, basically, their about is about as informative. Their solutions is, pretty much like could be about any company in the world. And then their contact is a contact. Right.
This looks so much like some of the fake fraudulent websites that I used to encounter in my 3.5 years in the oil and gas industry, where scamming people out of money was like $1 billion venture.
Mm-hmm.
That website just looks like a BS template. And what I used to do is I would go to these websites, I would call every phone number, I would look up every address, I would look up the business registration and all of that stuff to prove that they were basically fake.
Right. I mean, this looks pretty shady. I mean, you got to admit
What
that's
was
some
that?
shady.
Go back to that other document where it says Sheridan, Wyoming.
Yeah,
what company was that?
This is Operation Underground Railroad. And it says another one of their expenditures is Ms. Williams and Company LLC, available upon request, Sheridan, Wyoming.
Yeah,
$1.4 million.
Lots of people form LLCs in Wyoming because they used to, not anymore, but they used to have protections for corporate entities where you could not pierce the corporate veil and find out who owned it. But now those protections are gone. So we definitely could go in and find out who owns that LLC.
I was able to find out this much. There is a company called MS Williams and Company LLC in Wyoming. That's how much I know so far, just from publicly available filings. So
you can also publicly available find out who the registered agent is, and I would be surprised if you were surprised at the name of who that person is.
Interesting. Well, I did have.
And I'll say one thing real quick. Maven Brody's first big girl job was in Wyoming for an oil company.
Well, there you go.
Interesting.
That's it. It's Maven then. That's what we got. Law firm. I bet. Right?
Shocking.
Denver, Colorado, Phoenix, Arizona, Salt Lake City, Utah. Amounts of $957,000, $515,000, and $392,000. Just paying law firms, just sundry law firms. And it's like, holy crap, man! 2023, they had a strange year, but some other things,
saturated areas as well.
Mm-hmm.
Was it a strange year or was it a totally normal year for them?
I think it was like a year where they were doing what they have been doing, but probably at a bigger scale. Right?
Seems like
is OUR still in business?
So that's the interesting thing about OUR is that so they've kind of played musical CEOs for a bit, and their new CEO, basically they've been trying to get back save contracts that they have with law enforcement agencies all over the country who are canceling it, as far as I can tell. I know that at least they lost like a multi-million-dollar contract in Minneapolis. And so it's like, and basically like anytime that there's anything they're affiliated with in any way, anywhere in the country, they wind up with like mayors and city councilors having to go and get to talk to the press about, yes, we know that Tim Ballard is shady. Yes, we know that this organization has a shady past. here's the reason why we're still going forward with or not going forward with any operations with the organization, which is now they have like a women-led leadership. They have not only a female CEO, but they've got like other women leading the organization.
Because no females can be narcissists at all. So let's just go with that.
No, not at all.
Right. Maybe Lori Daybell can get a job.
Jail from prison. When she hears that they're shelling out $1 million to law firms.
No, I'm pretty sure that they've already got her on retainer as advisory counsel. I'm sure that they
law firm. She's the law firm, Phoenix, Arizona.
I don't know if you know this, but she has extensive trial experience.
Oh, she does. I've seen recently on television.
Yeah.
Yeah,
the evidence will show. The evidence will show
that she's the shittiest lawyer in history.
She couldn't lawyer herself out of a paper bag.
So it's interesting.
Pathetic.
We've lived to see interesting times. I'm glad to see some kind of justice happen somewhere. I mean, I hope that this really is lasting, that this sticks, and that somebody sticks it to Lori Daybell. I mean, she really is quite the dastardly person. Frankly, I think Chad Daybell got off easy. I don't think he got enough.
I honestly do too, because in death row, he's confined and he's not in the general population to experience their wrath, and I doubt very much that his small hands could do much to defend himself. But I'm really grateful. I'm always anxious. I was so anxious at the first trial that they were not going to find her guilty because so much of the evidence is circumstantial. There's never anything that shows Lori's fingerprints on anything, or gunshot residue on her hands. Alex confessed that he was the shooter, and so there was never any of that. And she actually made some salient points during her closing arguments about how much the police screwed up. And honestly, if the Chandler police had done a better job and held Alex at least for 24 hours while they investigated his prior assault on another of Lori's romantic partners, then it could have prevented some future tragedies. So she made some good points about that. I was really relieved to hear some of the jurors afterwards. One of the jurors said that he was not convinced, even all the way up until yesterday. Another of the two, both of the female jurors said that during the opening arguments, they felt sorry for her. They believed her tears. They felt like she was being victimized. So, it's always scary when you're dealing with someone who has that level of manipulative ability to know, like, are they truly ever going to be held accountable? And the hard thing is sometimes they're not. So I'm grateful to the jurors. I'm grateful that they were able to come to the conclusion they did. And I think now that she's gotten some guilty verdicts, I don't think the likelihood of appeal is going to happen. So I'm happy that she's probably going to spend the rest of her life in prison. It remains to be seen what happens to her, but I'm so sick of talking about her. I'm so sick of talking about Chad Daybell. I just hope, I started referring to her as her prisoner number because I'm so tired of saying her damn name. When her first trial was over, the statement that I wrote said that my childlike wish would be that there would be no cameras in the courtroom for her next trial and nobody covering it, and that nobody would be there. But of course, I knew that was a silly thing to wish. But the ultimate punishment for Lori would be for her to never get any attention ever again. Right. For her to fade into oblivion.
You need to go tomorrow and get yourself a full body massage and a nice long jacuzzi.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds heavenly.
It is past midnight for Megan right now.
It is, yeah.
Thank you, Megan, for staying up.
Of course. This is a good decompression for me. I appreciate it because I don't want to go to bed still thinking about the case.
I'm glad that you're out of Arizona too. I mean, not that Arizona is a terrible place. I mean, I did move away from there, but it's got to be a relief to just get away from all that because
it
was wearing you down.
It really
So-
was. And I, it's funny. Like I didn't, at the time I was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm doing this. It's good. We're taking care of it. I'm here, today digging back into it. I can feel it in my body. I can feel
could
how it's
really-
affecting me.
I could really hear it in your voice today.
Yeah,
Tim,
when
can we-
when I'm here in my own space, I can feel how it's affecting me in my body, and I'm grateful that I'm not in Arizona. I just decided I had enough being in the proximity of evil, and I wasn't going to do that to myself anymore.
Isn't it great to be surrounded by 3 handsome men and Randy?
I know when Tim was saying no man has ever been as lucky as, I think it was Hoffman you were referring to. I'm like, have you seen my
Yeah.
fiance? This is like a case of Beauty and the Beast.
But if anyone else calls you beast, I'll rip their throat out.
Well, I mean, when you think about everything he found, not just Mormon documents, but the Oath of the Freeman, the Lincoln stuff, the Washington stuff, the Mary Baker Eddy stuff, we don't know everything he forged still. I mean,
I was waiting
victims is-
for Adam and Eve's marriage certificate.
yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly.
One of the original fig leaves.
No.
With DNA on it.
I think you mean
Ugh.
apron.
See,
Yeah,
these are the kind of clips that will make
That we
this
love.
show popular right here. These
How did they
last
know how to make an
Tim-
apron? That's what I want to know.
2 hours.
What?
Here, sew yourself an apron with fig leaves. Like,
Take
What's
these
an
fig
apron?
leaves and make you aprons. How do you know what an apron is? There's no pattern. How do I?
that reminds me of-
There's no thread. Am I going to just use twine to I
Yeah.
don't know, vines to
We've
sew
been
them
naming the
together?
animals. You've given us no other job than to name the animals and look around.
They could talk to the
Now it's a fashion show.
insects, and they told the caterpillars to weave it together for them. Come on.
The silkworms. Exactly. They
silk-
commanded the silkworms to weave it
Exactly.
together. And they came up with perfectly normal animal names like butterfly and bird. And where were the curlumoms and the
Cumums.
cumulums and the
Curlumoms.
humoms and curulamoms?
That's
I think
right.
there's too many syllables in there.
That reminds me of
A lot of syllables.
a Bill Cosby joke when Bill Cosby, before he had a bad tainted name, but he did a thing where he was Noah, and he's pretending to be Noah, just sawing, sawing in his backyard, and God says, "Noah, build an ark." Okay, what's an ark? And then
It
it's
says
like,
I'm-
and it has to
Yeah,
be
I'm-
300 cubits long. What's a cubit? None of this is making sense.
You got to tell me what it is. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Hey, Gene, can we put Megan's links
Channel.
and channel so that anyone who hasn't seen the Lori Daybell case can
Yeah.
just
So
watch her
in
recap?
this right now, I put the third verse so that you could go and see Megan's
Oh,
channel.
thanks. I appreciate it, guys.
If all
Yeah.
else fails, you can just
Because
go to
we believe in
Facebook and
shameless
search
cross
Megan.
promotion.
That's right. That's
Yeah, I
right.
did that first for you guys today. Hopefully we got a little traffic from that.
That was very sweet. of you.
I'll
Thank
tell you, I got 18 subscribers. Thank you very much.
Nice. Perfect. I love
Cool.
it.
Good.
We got 29 people here. Wow.
We have 40 watching right now.
Wow.
you. Nice.
Cool.
40 of the
For
coolest
once
damn
we have,
people you'll find.
that's right. I'm just glad that we have more people watching than we have on the panel. That's always a victory.
That
That's a
is.
victory. That's a victory for Gene.
That's right. We don't do this show for anybody but us, but we're happy to have
Right.
you here. It's only for our entertainment. Because just looking at Tim makes me laugh every time.
I'm sure that was a compliment, Tim.
I made Tim really laugh a lot the other day. I called him up and I said, how was your Thanksgiving or whatever the hell the last holiday was? And he laughed for like a minute.
That was that yesterday or was
That was yesterday.
It was that yesterday. He says,
Yeah.
Happy Thanksgiving. And it was,
Yeah, like whatever the hell the holiday was, they just name them whatever names they want, you know.
Dang, I must
It's
be
like-
way behind because I thought it was Easter or something.
That's right. My brain says, you know, like get the toaster that, you know, freezes things. You know, open that door. You know, I'm one of those guys nowadays.
Hey, Randy, why don't you tell us about your upcoming episode?
That's
Yes.
fun. You should mention that.
Okay. We're
I
done
would love
talking
to.
crime. We turn the time over to Randy.
Speaking of crime, in our funeral home, we used to get a lot of the victims of crime, and we'd patch them and put them together and make them look presentable in their casket. But we thought it would be a good idea to have Gene and Megan and I host a show where we're entertaining the questions that people out there have regarding the final disposition when they lose a loved one or for themselves. There's way more options than people think. We're putting together a list of everyone that has asked questions and the questions they asked. And we've got a little, commercial coming up that will tease the show, and then we'll send these links out to the world when the show is actually going to air. And I, if any listeners have any questions that they would like answered, now's the time to go to my Facebook page or Gene's Facebook page and write that question down, because we'll be addressing the answers and the questions, obviously. And I think it'll be a really interesting show. I mean, I'm kind of interested I can't wait to hear us answer these. I'm interested in the questions they're asking.
Well, I wish I could think of
the
a question.
answers and undressing the questions.
And I wish I could think of a question to ask. I can't think of any.
I loved Tim's comment. I can't think of anything.
I can't think of anything.
Look at Kinder Kim. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Kinder Kim.
For everything.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
I definitely have some questions. I mean, you and I have interacted on your Facebook, Randy, but we've been doing a lot of investigation at the Church of Korihor into alternative ways to do godless memorials. And so we've been talking a lot about options for burials and alternatives for things, and getting into the legalities of it. This is the stage where we are at now. But it's a quite an interesting world. So I have a lot of questions, actually. So
well, good. Well, I think that we're going to be filming it in the first week of next month, and within a few days after that, we'll put it out. We'll put the links out. By next week, we'll have more answers of the actual.
I may think of some things to ask you, Randy.
Good. We might do it in two parts. We might do one where it's just Randy with his presentation of what he says, and then we might do a second show with everybody else's questions. But we're still discussing that too.
Well, good. Well, Tim, you know where to ask the question, and
Tim is waiting until he crosses the other side before he has a question.
We've got 90 questions.
Supply some answers.
Yeah,
Tim, we can't hear you. You have your finger on the microphone.
I either want to get shot into space or buried as a tree. Now I'm thinking, but I don't know.
See, those are two things. So we've talked about that, Randy and I, on your program. Yeah. And it's actually quite interesting, the issues surrounding that. But yeah, one of ours that we've been looking to create at the Church of Korihor is called an ascension. Because few people know this, you have to pay Elon Musk to shoot your ass into space now. That's how if you're going to do.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
I don't want to.
And they send you
anything.
They send this much of your ashes into space, like literally like a coin's worth, and just like eject you while they're pumping out the Starlink satellites. Maybe not that, but it might actually
be. Shoot your ass into space, but it's
that's what I said.
So will it eventually come back to Earth then?
It's the ashes of your dead ass. They're gonna shoot you that much of your
no,
dead ass.
But I won't stay there. I'll come back.
You just float around up there.
No,
For
I don't
sure.
want to come back.
Guess what?
I mean, it'll
Tim,
decay.
we're already in the middle of the universe right now. And Megan is made of star stuff.
You don't
all
understand.
made
I
of
want to
stone.
get off this rock
But what we
Me
what we're
personally-
talking-
permanently. Huh?
Viking funeral for me.
Yeah, I
Speed a
know.
boat, light me on
Yes.
fire, send me over
Yes.
a waterfall.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
I've looked into that. That's like there's like a whole legal world of that. Like I'm like, so many people want that done, and it's like so hard to do. And so I've been looking at like technically outside of 3 miles from any coast is technically international waters. Or it's burial at sea level, and then at like 12 miles or more, it's international waters, and you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, but there are
And
no
we make them
waterfalls 12 miles away from the coast. So, that kind of
There are
kills
on
the
islands.
romanticism for me. There are islands, that's true. Yeah.
And
Going
there are
back
islands
for a
that are
second
available.
to Mormon crimes. After Mormonism made illegal polygamy, some authorized sealings of polygamous marriages occurred off the coast of California in international waters. I'll just left people up to their own devices to
Yeah,
research
Wilford
that.
Woodruff, and I can't remember, off of San Francisco.
I'm so proud. I'm just right here.
And Mike Quinn was the one who found that.
All right.
Mike
Well,
was
I'm not sure if my brain is full or empty, but either way, I have got to sign off. Thank you
Megan,
guys
we
so
love
much
you.
for
Thank you
helping
very
me
much for
decompress.
everything.
Sending you
Thank you,
big
guys.
hugs.
Have a good
Big
night.
hugs. Big hugs.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Good night.
Good night.
Good morning, actually. All right.
Good morning. Good
Okay, now
morning.
we're going to run the ad. Yeah, guten Nacht and guten
Guten
Morgen.
Tag.
Nee, it's Nick Tag. This is Nacht.
Oh yeah, that's right. It's knocked for us.
It's just Nacht. Okay, now we're going to run the ad.
Oh, are we going to try to play that?
Run the ad. Play the ad.
Did
for-
he ask me, or is he going to try to do it?
I don't know.
The
All
thing
I
that
know is-
D-Bays did?
Yeah.
What? Am I out of the loop on something?
Yes.
I'm sure I am. I'm out of the loop on a lot of things.
It's okay.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what to do for sure. Did Randy say he needs to do something?
I don't know. He was playing with his dog.
I already left and did my business about an hour ago, so I'm good for another 40 minutes.
It's it's not been announced because the conversation just happened today, but the plan currently is that I will be going back on Mormon News Roundup for the first time on Sunday to do an episode with Divas. So I'm not sure quite yet what we're going to talk about, but we're in the opening talks of it. So it'll be my first time going back on Mormon News Roundup, and some of you out there are outside of all the drama around that. But the text I got from Divas this morning was, "Do you want to bury the hatchet?" And I said, "Yes."
Okay.
So
Sorry, guys, that I had to take a quick break there.
That's
That's
okay.
right.
Basement flooding.
oh no, are you serious?
Well,
Oh,
we
crap.
found it right before the podcast started, and so my contractor
Just working on it.
He's been working on it during the podcast, and I just had to tell him thank you so much for responding this time of night and getting us fixed.
Oh my gosh, that's the worst. I've had that happen so many times.
Oh,
Basement floods are the worst thing, man. I'm sorry to hear that. This is
Yeah.
my basement, by the way.
If only your basement was as tight as a dish.
Tight like unto a dish.
Tight like unto a dish. That was Joseph thinking about his new bride, is what I
Oh
think.
God, what? Don't.
And he just threw that in the Book of Mormon. See, honey, I did talk about you in it.
Emma,
Uh-huh.
that's your ass is tight like unto a dish. Her ass is nothing like that.
And
gonna
someday
try
we'll go
that
to
line.
space, I predict.
I'm going to try
Yeah,
that line and see if it, gets me anywhere.
Thanks to Hawkeyes for being a new subscriber.
Yes, thank you, Hawkeye.
I was looking into some Kinder Kim says about there's a TED talk about putting bodies in a mushroom suit. I've been looking into human composting for the Church of Korihor, the possibility of human composting. Also, there's a cremation that can be done with electrolysis and water. We've been looking at just been made legal in several states.
I'm looking into pre-death cremation.
Well,
are you trying to tell us your wife threatened to set you on fire again, Gene?
It's one of the most painful ways, but actually both of those, Joe, are available here in Washington. And so is, I won't give all our secrets away, but so is euthanasia. Yeah, we're kind of.
I support euthanasia, youth in Europe, youth in South America, youth in America.
But yeah, we have a composting facility between here and Seattle, and
so that's new, though, right? I've read about this. That it was interesting. This human composting facility you're talking about. I think if it's the one I'm thinking of, which there aren't very many of them, from what I understand, but it's really interesting. The technology, I think it's great, but my understanding is that they raised like $4 million to build it, but it ended up costing like $12 million. But it looks cool. I mean, it looks really cool. So really I love the idea.
Yeah,
I want a mushroom meal instead of a mushroom suit.
Yeah,
I want to consume enough mushrooms so they just start growing.
Or do you want to be consumed?
Then I just lay down in the backyard and I just like grow into the grass.
My mission president.
You've been watching The Last of Us,
and he grew the wrong kind and got really sick one time.
Yeah, he wants to be cordyceps, is what he wants.
Right.
We thought it was funny. We thought of everything that President Perker knows. He knew mushrooms really well. He told us about all kinds of mushrooms. And then he says, I planted the wrong kind.
So one of the things that I had discovered in myself, it's like I started investigating this because what we've been talking about doing is creating these urns that you can pull on the bottom of a weather balloon up into space, and they're airtight, and then at a certain point they will burst and send your ashes into the upper atmosphere. And with a GoPro filming it, so you can see like the curvature of the Earth, you can see space and everything. And
that's
for
right,
a lot less,
fill the ozone, the hole in the ozone with that.
You'd have to have pretty specialized cameras for that. But like, there's like all kinds of laws governing the handling of human remains, and we're going to have to work out some of that. But one of the things that I discovered was that green burials and or all natural burials in Utah, basically, if it's on private land, you can do it, and and there's really almost no regulation. And so we've been talking about possibly looking into doing like a green burial cemetery out here in the mountains somewhere. So
we can be buried all natural and not in our celestial suit.
Right, in the only celestial suit you have, my friend, which is your birthday suit.
That's right.
We'll just put you in actually, Caitlin Doty, I don't know if you've heard of her, Joe, but I just had a dinner with Maven Brody. And,
I saw that.
Yeah, and she was telling me that she knows Caitlin Doty, so I sent her a picture because she's one of my son Garrett's best friends, and so I sent her a picture of Caitlin waving, and she is all about green burials. As a matter of fact, the typical mortician does not like her because she's not an advocate of embalming and shoving your body full of chemicals and then putting it in the earth, and all this stuff will be discussed in our show for sure. I see questions coming in now, and
so are we going to show the promo?
And yes, they do offer the families these options, but it's good to know ahead of time what you want, because your kids will
You
have
want to be able
tough
to
time.
advocate.
Yeah. So, yeah, Caitlin Doty has a channel, and it's really interesting. It's it's kind of what got me into the whole funeral thing. So
Cool.
why I went to
I'll have to look into that.
Yeah.
Well, it's time for the death of this episode.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
it is.
Thanks,
we
everyone.
I hope
for
you guys
watching.
have a great night.
Are we going to show the promo?
So
Oh,
I really can't do it. Can you do it, Randy?
no, I'm
Yeah,
not
so-
smart enough.
We'll
Okay.
send you the link. We'll try
All
to
right.
figure out how to do it and put it in a future episode or
Maybe
on
next week.
our
Next week.
Facebook pages. And we have
Okay.
our learning curve is sort of flatline.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm working on it, but trying to learn all this technical stuff. But thank heavens, I had some help from Divas. So
Thanks
Anyway.
everyone for watching.
Thank
Like
you,
and
guys.
subscribe.
Yeah, my friend.
Have a great 2025, and all the love to Megan, Connor, anybody
All
that
the
watches
hugs.
this in the future. I put
Love.
her channel in our description. I put it in the chat. I could probably put it in the chat again, third verse, so it's there a couple times. And what's it? Justice for Charles, right?
Justice for
Today.
Charles.
The
Sounds
wicked
good.
Lori Vallow is guilty. All right. Talk to you later.
Good
good night,
night.
everyone.
Bye-bye. Good night.